It's a beautiful day today and we're reading some more Malicious Compliance. So today we're going to do a brand new episode, but there's also going to be a compilation after this. The compilation will start at this time on the screen. And yeah guys, I hope you're doing amazing and thank you for joining me once again. And let's get straight into it. Enjoy guys. Housemates tell me to watch TV in my room. No problem. I read another story on here which inspired me to write this, but mine's nowhere near as interesting, unfortunately. During my first year of university, I shared a house with one girl and 3 boys. The other girl kept to herself mainly. I was the only one who had a job and therefore that really bought anything with me except for clothes and a laptop. I decided to be nice and I put my TV, quite a decent sized one that I saved up for a while for, in the front room so everybody could watch it, as I could always use my laptop when I was in my bedroom. One of the boys brought a PlayStation with him and connected it to the TV, which I had absolutely no problem with. For the first couple of months, everything was fine and they shared using the TV really well. I generally watch an hour or two the days that I wasn't working, and they used it most of the other time. After a while, every time I wanted to watch a program, I used to get, "There are 3 of us and one of you, just go watch it in your bedroom so we can play FIFA." Wow, that's so rude. For a lot of programs, I have no problem watching on my laptop, but there are certain things that are really better to watch on the real TV, and I did point out politely that the TV did belong to me, and I was only wanting it for an hour. I'd also give them plenty of notice when I wanted to watch a program. Eventually, I just had enough and I snapped. I came down to watch something after I told them the previous day that I wanted to watch it, and they told me to go and watch it in my bedroom. So I did exactly that. I unplugged the TV and I disconnected their PlayStation and I carried it up to my bedroom. I set it up just in time to watch my program, which I had to turn up extra loud so I could drown out their moaning and banging on my door. The only annoying thing is, the next day one of them had called the bank of Mummy and Daddy, who apparently agreed with them that I was awful and had ordered a new TV for them, so they only went without one for a week or so. It was a bit smaller too. Wow, and the audacity to say that you were being awful. They were being so rude the entire time. Oh, that's so frustrating. Yeah, justice. Good on you for doing this. And it's not like they forgot that it was your TV or something. They're just super rude. That's so frustrating. The next one says, "I got fired and it cost the store approximately 30 grand. I was working a second job at our local small grocery and butcher shop, few nights a week to pay for my kids' activities. I was hired as a cashier. The person that did the end-of-day butcher shop cleanup and sanitizing quit, so instead of hiring someone for cleanup, the owners decided the cashiers could just do it between customers. The owner sat at their office watching TV and messing around, and when a customer came in, the doorbell would ring. They would buzz the phone in the butcher area for a cashier to come and check them out. When I came in for my shift at 6 p.m. and I was told about the new setup, I told them no. I was not hired to clean up the butcher area. I was hired to run the register and stock shelves. The owner then said that I would clean the butcher shop or I could consider myself fired, and they walked away. I said fine. I grabbed my things and I left. Apparently the owner thought that I gave in and I was in doing the cleaning, so they buzzed the butcher area when customers came in for about 2 hours before someone told them that no one was coming out to check them out. The store's liquor area, the cigarettes and scratches all got emptied out. It was 7:30 and I got a screaming phone call from the owner about how he was calling the police and I was going to get arrested. Yeah, right. Owner did call the police. The owner stated he wanted me arrested as an accomplice to the theft because I left. The cops asked me to come to the store, which I did, and I explained that the owner had fired me, so I went home and the CCTV would prove that fact. The tape was reviewed and plain as day, the owner said that I was fired. I estimate they lost about 30 grand. Yeah, right. And stuff like this is bound to happen if you've got an owner acting like this. Like with how the owner was, of course this happened. Like, oh yeah, we don't need to hire someone to clean up. We can get the cashiers to do it while the owner sits in their office watching TV and doing pretty much nothing. Yeah, that's not how you run a business. The next one is called "Automated my useless boss out of her job." This happened a few years ago. I was a data and reporting analyst and I did all the ad HOC reports for the company. My boss, we'll call her Kerry, was useless. She was one of those people that was always late, left early and took days off at short notice. The only thing of value that she did was all the regular reports like sales and revenue. We suspected that she got away with it because she was having an affair with her boss. We'll call him Stuart. Our CEO was a fairly decent bloke. He'd look for ways to cut costs and would pay regular bonuses for the best cost-saving initiatives. Kerry was very keen to submit ideas and encouraged all of us to automate our tasks so she could try and take the credit for the savings. On one of her Skive days, which coincidentally Stuart was sick, as well the CEO was desperate for the sales report that my boss does. I said I'd give it a look and I'd see if I could get it done. Normally she'd spend 2 to 3 days doing it each week, but the CEO wanted it that afternoon. A quick inspection of the data showed it would be quite easy to automate, so I knocked up the necessary script and I got it over to the CEO, who was super impressed that not only I'd got it done in a couple of hours, but also that it could be updated whenever he needed it. He asked if I could also look at the revenue, churn, and a couple of other reports. Over that afternoon, I automated everything that my boss did. Both Kerry and Stuart were back in the next day, but were immediately summoned to the CEO's office before being suspended and sent home. Turns out the CEO knew that they were having an affair, and all the times that they were sick or late or had to leave early was so they could go do the horizontal mumbo. He'd not done anything about it because of how important these reports were. Now they were automated, he was able to get them suspended and later fired for gross misconduct for all the time that they'd taken off. I also got a nice bonus out of it. Well, you replaced an entire employee with a script? That's so sad. Sad that that's all they were providing for the place. Like, yeah, you weren't joking when you said useless. That's unbelievable. I feel bad laughing, but come on. The next one is called "The city wanted me to take better care of my gardens, so I had them approved by the local Nature Conservation Association. The guys at Pro Revenge argued that it better belongs here, so here I am. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front facing the street and one in the back bordering my neighbour's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose archer for the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always very busy keeping up the garden, planting and weeding and keeping everything tidy. My grandfather died in 2002, and after that the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university or school. But then 2005, my mum read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilac, rhododendron, roses and various berries. Later we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mum is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and me so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she dies. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape with all the birds and bees and bumblebees and butterflies flying around. In autumn we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Then recently we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure that nothing is overgrowing the pavement, and while the berries are poisonous, to get to them you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They're also known to be ideal food for some local birds. So I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and I asked if they'd like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature friendly. They approved our gardens as especially nature friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from our point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature, and since our city prides itself with being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. Wow, that's so awesome. Yeah, leave the garden alone. I really enjoyed that. I love how satisfying these are. Okay, one more story and then it's compilation time. Don't like it? Leave. This happened today. My husband and I have been car shopping as I was in an auto accident at the beginning of summer. Our car was totaled in the accident and it's been a long process. We finally decided on the automobile we wanted, got all our paperwork completed and had our financing all worked out. All we needed to do was sign all the paperwork and drive away. The dealership is 90 minutes from our house, so we took the kids out of school early and my husband took off work after lunch. We wanted to make sure that we were home in time to keep our typical school night schedule going. We get to the dealership at our agreed time. We did one more test drive and we're ready to sign everything. And then the game started. All of a sudden the finance office wasn't ready for us, and then after an almost 2-hour wait they were ready. The finance person started by trying to upsell us on all the add-ons that dealers try to sell you. We told her we didn't want anything extra, we just wanted to look at the numbers and read the paperwork and sign it all and then head out. We had a limited amount of time to get this done and still be able to get home in time for the kids' bedtime. The first thing she does is pull out a different set of numbers than we were originally given and agreed to. All of a sudden there's a dealership fee for selling us a car at this time of year, nearly $1,000 for this nonsense. Then she states that if we don't like the fee, we could leave as they have people begging to buy cars from them. So my husband and I stood to leave. She then tells us that we can't leave as she's already printed the forms. I laughed at her and I told her to go out and get one of those beggars to buy it. So far the finance person has called twice and the salesperson has called 4 different times. I guess they weren't expecting someone to get that far and then walk away. Wow, that's so awful. Just trying to get more money out of you with a whole bunch of BS. I'm so happy that you left. Like, oh, what's that? You're gonna try and get even more money out of us? Yeah, no, see you later. I'm sorry guys, but that's all the time I've got for today. Let's read a few wholesome memes and then it's compilation time. Garbage men taking a break. They deserve it. Oh, that's so cute. The garbage men on the swings. I bet that was a really good day. They look like they're having such a good time. I finally ran into my mum at college and she took me to her class to meet her classmates, and it was the cutest thing ever. Wow, that's so awesome. Like, hey everybody, this is my son. Son, meet all of my friends. That's so cute. The only toxic relationship worth staying in. Oh, that's so true. Nez actually bit me today. She's such a funny little thing. She doesn't like her stomach being touched. And guess what I did? And yeah, she's so cute and she bit my finger. The school let this girl have her service dog next to her in the yearbook. This is respect. Wow, that's so awesome. And that's such a good photo too. Like, hello, I'm Katie. Katie the dog is so photogenic. Okay, that was so fun. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful time. And if you did enjoy, make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, guys, enjoy the compilation that's about to play. And I'll see you in tomorrow's episode. Bye! Don't care about people calling me on your old number. All sorted. This was about 10 years ago. Also, English is my second language and I'm writing this on my phone. I'll have a TLDR at the end. I just moved to Australia and I'd gotten a new phone. But as it turns out, my number was someone else's old number. Every other week I'd get calls by a tradie who wanted to know why I wasn't on site, mate, or what I wanted done with a building project. Every time I explained at length that they got the wrong number, and quite often folks on the other end were absolutely rude, or they thought I was taking the piss and they insist I answered their questions or show up on site. I was over it, so I googled my own number and I did some digging and I eventually found out the guy who had my number before and then his new number, so I called him. I politely explained the dilemma, pointed out there were two websites still having his old and my new number, and if he could please change this and let his contacts know about his new number and to delete the old one as it was getting quite tedious for me. By that time I used my number for work, visa applications and landlords and friends, and changing it would have been a huge pain, and I explained all of this. Well, of course, he was just as pleasant as most of his contacts and told me something along the lines of, I don't give a damn, mate, that's not my freaking problem. Get F to sort your own stuff out, mate. Well, the universe provides, and so I got a great opportunity to do just that. Only a few weeks later, I received a call in the early hours of one morning by another disgruntled guy, telling me he was early and demanded to know where I wanted the sand put down and how to get in. I asked what sand, and I was told he had a full truckload of sand as ordered and no one on site and it was all fenced off. So briefly did I think about launching into explanation, but I was tired and over it. And then I realized the opportunity provided. I snapped back at him with no uncertainty. Mate, it's all good. Dump it all right in the driveway, front of the fence. We'll sort it out when we get there. The guy said, are you sure, mate? It's a lot of sand. Me, absolutely sure, mate. Thanks a lot. Him, all right then, boss. And then hangs up. Well, I go back to bed snoozing for another hour with a big smile on my face until my phone rings again and I see it's old mate with his new number, who I had saved when I called him a few weeks ago. I pick up rather chipper and he doesn't waste any time launching into a series of swear words and how he has no access to the site and that he has to move a literal ton of sand by hand and whether or not I told the sand guy to dump it all there. I replied, you told me to sort this out myself. This is me sorting this out. You can remove the numbers and let your contacts know or not. Totally up to you, mate. He was fuming, called me a few more choice words, promising to find me and a lot more before we ended the conversation. However, the numbers disappeared from the internet really quick after that, and I never got another call. I still have my number, and every time I see a truck with sand, I chuckle to myself, thinking of this guy moving a ton of sand by hand and losing a fair few hours of labor because he was a douchebag and couldn't be bothered sending a few messages. Oh my god, that's so funny. They changed it so fast, and it is deserved as well because you don't treat somebody like this. They called up to say that they need to change their number or like delete it from the websites and stuff, so they get stuck into them and swearing at them and calling them names and stuff. Yeah, that's not very nice. Wow, that was so good. Manager tries to crack down on the dress code. I respond by wearing yoga pants to work. So I, 34 male, used to work at a popular convenience store, really popular with a cult-like following years ago. I've always been a bit of a clown, but very good at following rules while doing so. After working there for a few years and seeing managers come and go, we got in a new woman who was just miserable and really wanted to flex her authority. Shortly after she started, she posted the uniform portion of the handbook in the break room and started complaining about people's attire, but obviously took the biggest issue with girls wearing yoga pants. So me being the petty rule follower I am, combed through the policy and noticed some things in the wording. The rule stated that yoga pants are allowed as long as the ankles are flared, and there was no gender designation for these articles. Cue the malicious compliance. I and a friend went to Walmart after work working and bought me a couple of pairs of flared yoga pants. Now, mind you, I'm not a huge guy, but I am chubby and I have a big beard. I began wearing them almost every day that I worked, and especially if she was working. This infuriated her. I would regularly hear her protests and even saw her go to the AGM and GM. Their response was always, "I can't say anything, he's in dress code." This continued for months before she requested a transfer. But what made it even more fun was trolling weird pervert customers that would stand at the deli area and gawk at the young ladies working, especially if they bent over the hot food table. When I would notice this, I'd sidle over beside them and give the boys two butts to look at before whipping my head around and making eye contact with them. The level of disgust on their faces filled my heart with joy. Wow, that one was so funny as well. I love this subreddit. I know I said it in the last episode, but I'm sad I haven't been making videos on this for ages. Not 5 minutes early, but 10 minutes late, and it cost them a fortune. The 5-minute early post reminded me of a story that happened to a friend of mine. Let's call him Bobby. Bobby was a CNC machinist, a good one, and the only one. The company he worked for made an intricate product, and his CNC part was crucial. The rest of the product bolted onto it, and the finished product sold for tens of thousands of dollars. It took 3 hours to make this piece. Bobby would make about 3 a day. He'd make one in the morning, take his coffee break, and then make another, and then take his lunch break. That ate up about 6.75 hours. He'd stay late to make the third part and make 2 hours overtime. His new foreman turned out to be more than a bit of a jerk. He'd try to get Bobby to do other tasks, and Bobby said no, as he needed to monitor the CNC machine during all stages of the cycle. Foreman complained to the plant manager, who told him to back off and leave Bobby alone. One day there was a bad snowstorm and Bobby was 10 minutes late. The foreman was there to meet him at the time clock with a crap-eating grin on his face, holding a demerit slip. Bobby clocked in a minute late the previous week, and the union rules said that if you were late twice within 14 days, you got 20 demerit points. Bobby and the foreman got into a bit of an animated conversation, and the union steward came over and said that Bobby had no choice but to take the demerit hit. So Bobby went to work. His shift was 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m, but he usually stayed until 6:30 to finish the last part. Not today. At 4:30, he shut the machine down and headed for the door. The next morning, foreman comes over and says that the assembly team is short a part. Yeah, I know, I'm working on it right now. It'll be done in 2 hours, but they need 3 a day. Why didn't you make 3 of them yesterday? Because my shift is over at 4:30 and I went home. What? You stayed every night until the third part is finished? Bobby pulled the demerit slip out of his shirt pocket, looked the foreman in the eye and said, not anymore. Bobby had done the math. Every week, instead of getting 15 parts, they were getting 10 or 11. The foreman tried to sweep it under the rug, but within a few days, chaos ensued. The assemblers had no core part, and their team went to the plant manager to let him know that production was falling. The assemblers liked it. They got to hang around yakking while they waited for the next CNC part to arrive. Eventually, there was a meeting with the plant manager, the foreman, the union steward, and Bobby. The foreman tried to throw Bobby under the bus, saying that he refused overtime. Union steward pointed out that, as per the contract, mandatory overtime was only in cases of emergencies, and this wasn't an emergency. Bobby had every right to decline the overtime. The foreman lost his temper, started yelling at Bobby and the union steward, and was asked to leave the meeting. The plant manager knew that he was screwed and looked at Bobby and asked, "What's it gonna take to get you to work the overtime?" Bobby smiled and replied, "As long as the foreman is my supervisor, I won't be working a minute of overtime." And that was the last anyone saw the foreman. By sticking to the contract, Bobby cost the company a handful of parts worth many thousands of dollars and put the company into a position where their lowered production would cost them even more in perpetuity. Bobby worked a couple of Saturdays to catch up and made double time for those shifts. They hired a new foreman who was explicitly instructed, do not under any circumstances mess with Bobby. Like, hey, listen everybody, Bobby is super important to us, so don't mess with him. If he's 5 minutes late, don't worry about it. Yeah, like the top comment says, see that guy over there? That's Bobby. Bobby makes a key component of a machine that sells for tens of thousands of dollars. If you come to us with a complaint about Bobby working overtime, or Bobby comes to us telling us that you gave him crap because traffic was slow and he was 5 minutes late someday, you will be asked to leave. I altered my uniform to comply with the dress code in my employee handbook. Back when I, now 37 female, was younger with a lot of attitude and a loud mouth, I worked for a nice Italian restaurant in my hometown. I didn't have a single issue with management until 7 months into my employment when a male manager joined the team. He was a bit of a misogynist. He would make backhanded comments about women, and he only had issues with the female staff. He wrote me up for some ridiculous reasons, one being opening the door too hard when it was a heavy steel door that you had to put some muscle into to open. He fired another lady who was pregnant for asking to be put in a section closest to the kitchen. She filed a lawsuit and she won too. Anywho, one day I walked into work, he pulled me into the office immediately and presented me with a write-up slip. It was because I was not wearing a belt. The dress code stated if pants have belt loops, a belt must be worn. Okay, my uniform that day didn't comply with the dress code. The issue was that I hadn't worn a belt in 7 months while he and other managers never mentioned it. In my opinion, the appropriate thing to say would have been, hey, I see you haven't been wearing a belt and we haven't really been enforcing it. The dress code says that you must wear a belt if you have belt loops. I'll give you so and so amount of days to purchase one before I start enforcing. But no, I just got a straight write-up. So I went home and I cut off all the belt loops of my work pants. The next day, immediately upon walking in, he asked me where my belt was. I pointed to my pants and said, where are my belt loops? The employee handbook stated if there are belt loops, but I no longer had belt loops. Let's just say it didn't make him like me anymore, but I felt like a hero standing up to him in such a petty manner. And you're not doing anything wrong. You don't have belt loops anymore. Like, that's completely fair enough. No one ever makes it hot enough. Okay, then you asked for it. I used to be a chef in a Mexican restaurant in a small town in Australia nearly 40 years ago. We were modestly popular and I loved working there. One night a young man came in to dine with a young lady. It was obviously a first date. They ordered nachos to share with a side of jalapenos for their entree, and he ordered a steak at Veracruz, very hot for his main, and the young lady ordered a chicken burrito, mild for hers. I, as I usually did, would walk around the tables and ask if people were enjoying the food. After the nachos, I checked in on him, and the young man informed me that the chili that accompanied the nachos were not hot at all, and that he loved hot food. I was informed that he'd traveled extensively and had eaten some of the hottest food in the world, and that no one had ever made a dish too hot for him. He reiterated that he wanted his steak made extra hot. To be honest, I found him to be pompous and rather obnoxious in the way he was speaking down to me, and I found myself taking a disliking to him. I will add at this point that the young lady was looking a little bit uncomfortable, and I got the impression that her date was not going as she'd expected. I headed to the kitchen. I made her a lovely chicken burrito while putting together his steak. He wanted it hot. He was gonna get it. Our steak was usually a steak cooked and topped with our house tomato sauce, with some capsicums or bell peppers for you Americans, and onions with a touch of chili. On this occasion, I set to work. Keep in mind, this was Australia back in the 80s, and we did not get a lot of different chilies back then, and a jalapeno was considered hot by most Aussie palates. Hey, we were an uneducated bunch. I had a few bird's eye chilies in the kitchen that were mainly there for staff and the resident Mexican guitarist meals, so I started with those. I finally diced about 10 of those with their seeds. I then started sweating off my onions and capsicums. I then threw the chilies in and added about a tablespoon of chili powder and about a tablespoon of cayenne. I soon felt the fumes hit my nose and the back of my throat, and my eyes started watering. I ran to the door of the kitchen to get a breath of breathable air, as the air in my tiny kitchen was rapidly becoming unbreathable. I ran back to my pan and put a ladle of the house tomato sauce in. I then let that simmer for a few minutes. I then added some chopped up jalapenos from a jar in my fridge, and I thought, why not? And I went in with a bit more chili powder. I then put the flash fried steak in to finish off in the sauce. I served it all up on a plate with some rice, served up the chicken burrito, and hit the bell for the waitress to serve it to the table. The waitress came back and told me that as she placed it in front of him, he said this had better be hot. She assured him that the chef had done as he requested. I went to the door of the kitchen, joined by my waitress, to watch the show unfold, and unfold it did. I watched with glee as he sliced the steak, took a piece on his fork, and with a smug look on his face, he put it in his mouth. He took a chew and then realized his mistake. I saw it. That moment when his face changed, but he was trying so hard not to show it. He couldn't. He was on a date and he'd bragged so hard, and now he had to go through with it. He ate the steak. I could see every ounce of pain in his face. He struggled hard. His date watched him with a slight smile on her lips, and I got the impression that she was thoroughly enjoying his pain. He went through several jugs of water. He sweated. He barely spoke, and he looked damn uncomfortable. At the end of the meal, I came out of the kitchen and I asked him if he had enjoyed his meal. His words: could have been hotter. He never came back. His date, she became a regular and told us that he was an insufferable fool and she never saw him again. I have no regrets, besides I wish Carolina Reapers had been around then. Wow, that's so funny. Like, yeah, come on, make it hot. And they're sweating and they're in pain. And also they can what? Look cool in front of their date? Like, at that point, would it have even tasted any good? No, I must show everybody that I can eat any spicy food. These are so fun to read. My boss told me I couldn't take a smoke break if I wasn't smoking. I first started working at 17 as a housekeeper cleaning condos in downtown Toronto. It wasn't a bad gig. The building was under construction, finishing units and such, so there was quite a bit of dust, but other than that, it was fairly easy to work, and at the time I was getting above minimum wage. I was the only cleaner cleaner in the building, but I was good friends with the security guards, and I would hang out with them on most of my breaks. They were all smokers, and I noticed they were taking small breaks, so if I happened to be near them when they were taking a smoke break, I'd hang out with them. My boss was a sweet guy, but he did casually mention that the smoke breaks were for smokers only, and I couldn't just hang out with them. The next break I had to sit down with my security guards, and they joked that I should have just had a cigarette in my hand, but not actually smoke it. That's when I decided to be a little bit creative with my malicious compliance. The next day I came into work with a small pack of sparklers. I kept them in my pocket, and when I saw the security guards taking a smoke break, I went out with them and I pulled out a sparkler and lit it up and just kind of stood there with them as the sparkler went off. We all had a good chuckle about it. The boss saw me and came outside probably to talk to me about not taking a smoke break if I wasn't a smoker, but he saw the sparkler in my hand. The security guards pointed out that technically I was smoking as the sparkler was producing little bits of smoke. The boss laughed it off and apologized and said that as long as I get my work done, I can take smoke breaks with the others with or without the sparklers. Oh, that's so good. That one had a happy ending. It's so nice that they apologized and realized it was stupid. The top comment: I always thought that if smokers get a 15-minute smoke break, then the rest of us should get a 15-minute break to cry in our cars. I took a co-worker's parking spot after they complained I was arriving late. My commute to work got progressively longer and unpredictable over the past year due to 4 bridge closures occurring within months or weeks of each other. No date has been given for their reopening, so for the time being, short of heading off for work an hour or two ahead of time, you risk arriving a minute to 5 minutes late once or twice a week. Everyone has been impacted by the traffic in one way or another, which I mentioned because there was no way someone could feign ignorance. One co-worker though didn't care about legitimate reasons for me being slightly late for work every now and then, and complained so adamantly behind my back about it that my immediate supervisor reluctantly wrote me up. I knew it had to be that one co-worker because they would get noticeably irritated whenever traffic conditions were brought up. They would leave the room or loudly interrupt with unimportant questions or comments or roll their eyes. They're also known for complaining about every little thing, at one point having played a big role in not having a seasonal employee rehired the following year. Despite my co-worker, I love my job, so I started leaving for work an hour and a half earlier than before. My arrival time is now anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes before my shift starts, and that's when I noticed the annoying co-worker always arrives about 10 minutes early and always has a very convenient street parking space available. I used to park on a different side of our building before traffic got bad and had never noticed that they'd unofficially claimed that public parking spot as theirs. Most of the time I'm at work early enough to get my pick of any spot in our always crowded employee parking lot, but no parking spot besides theirs makes up for my having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. That co-worker can't complain about me being late now. They know better than anyone I'm at work way before I have to. I've mentioned my arrival time to other co-workers with them in earshot, so they know I'm parking there out of spite. I've also gone as far as parking right in the middle of a space large enough to accommodate their car and mine. I have no idea if they've complained to our supervisor about it or not, but I really want them to have been stupid enough to complain about me taking their public parking spot away. Yeah, they need to mind their own business. How frustrating. Yeah, like this comment says, Jesus Christ, I'm glad I work with adults. Oh, I'm on private property. My first time posting here. I used to work for a supermarket chain, and quite often I'd be asked by management to work at other locations. Most of the time this wasn't a big deal. I was happy to help out, and it gave me an excuse to drive and have the petrol paid for. However, one day I was asked to work at a location very far at a very early hour of the morning. I initially refused on the grounds that I'd have to wake up at around 2 a.m. in order to have a shower, and then have breakfast, and then drive to be on site for 5 a.m. After some arm bending from management, I finally relented, and I begrudgingly agreed that I would do it.
I grudgingly accept.
Due to the drive not taking nearly as long as I initially expected, I arrived on location at about 4:30 a.m. I waited in my car with the music playing. At 4:50 a.m, I get a loud knock on the car window, nearly making me jump out of my skin. It was the manager of that store, who never seen me before, didn't know who I was. The conversation went like this: Manager, you need to leave, this is private property. Me, oh, but manager interrupting, I don't care, go now. Me realizing I can play this to my advantage. Oh, I'm sorry sir, I don't want any problems, of course, I'll go right away, sorry. And as per his request, I drove home with a smile on my face, knowing that I have the rest of my day free to myself. A few hours later, I get a phone call. I answered the unrecognized number, and I recognized the voice immediately. It was the manager who told me to leave. Manager, hello, I'm looking for so-and-so. Me, yeah, hi, that's me. Manager, this is the manager calling from so-and-so location. I was expecting you to work with me today. You should have been here for 5 5 a.m. Me trying to sound casual. Yeah, I was there waiting in my car. You told me to leave, remember? Manager, but you didn't say that. Me interrupting. There are no ifs or buts. I was on private property and I was asked to leave. I was legally obliged to do so. Manager, right, but don't you think? Me interrupting. It doesn't matter what I thought. I was asked to leave private property. I'm not going to break the law and risk getting in trouble with the police. It was at this point that he hung up on me. I expected to get in trouble for what had happened, but I never heard anything more about it. This was a few years back too now. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I hope you enjoyed it. Edit to answer frequently asked questions. I was paid for petrol money and travel time. I was not paid for the shift. It was originally going to be a day off anyway. I suffered no financial losses whatsoever as a result of this. My local manager never spoke about this and I never mentioned it to him. I didn't suffer any disciplinary action. But yes, I did have to wake up early and lose out on some sleep. Wow, that's so funny. Come on, I'm just doing what you said. I left, okay? What more do you want from me? Company doesn't allow me to have my phone, so I cost him $100,000 plus. I originally posted this as a comment to a similar story as I totally forgot that it happened until reading that. The original poster suggested I should share it as my own post, so here it goes. I've worked in a warehouse for years. A few years back, I was a contractor. Companies would hire us and bring in 20 plus people for a few weeks when they desperately needed help. I was a shift lead, usually the highest person on site, and I needed to talk to my boss regularly throughout the day on a company phone. One warehouse had a policy where only managers could have their phone on the floor, and technically I wasn't a manager. Everyone under me was instructed to leave them in their car or a locker. However, I needed mine. One day I was talking on the phone to my boss, and one of the managers for the company we were working for demanded I hand him my phone, and I refused. He then threatened to kick me out, so I rounded up all my workers and said that we were taking a break. We all go outside and I tell my boss what happened. He comes to the site instantly and starts talking to their boss and tells him I need my phone on the floor, but since I don't have manager in my title, they refuse. So my boss decided I can't do my job, so nobody under me can do theirs either. At the end of the day, the other company is pissed that we didn't get any work done and decided to cancel our contract, which cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's written in the contract that they have to pay to send us home before the original end date. We all still got paid and got 2 weeks off before having to go somewhere else. And it says here, the best part is they were a year behind schedule when we arrived, caught them up by 6 months in 2 weeks, and then they fired us and got blacklisted by like 90% of the companies that could come and help them, and ended up filing for bankruptcy about a year later. They sure showed us who's in charge. Yeah, what? All because of policy that says that you have to be a manager, and they stuck by that even though it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why? The next one is called Cable Company Told Me I Don't Have Cable. This happened around the year 2000. I just purchased a house and met the previous owners while they were moving out. They were really nice people and we had a friendly conversation about the house. The previous owner mentioned that the cable bill was paid up until the end of the month, about 3 more weeks, and that he had already turned in his cable box, but the cable signal should still be active until the end of the month. I told him thanks and we let him finish packing up. We moved in the following week, and when I hooked the cable to my TV, I got all the basic cable channels, which was all I was planning on getting anyway. Come the end of the month, I called the cable company and I asked to sign up for basic cable. The sales rep told me there was going to be a $100 hookup fee. I told them that the previous owner had left his account active and that I was literally watching cable as we speak, so there should not need to be a hookup fee because the cable was already hooked up. They just needed to start billing me for basic cable. The rep then clicked on her keyboard and told me that her data showed that the address I was at does not have cable and they'd need to send out a crew to activate the signal. I told her that I was not paying $100 for a hookup fee, and I said never mind, I don't want cable. I waited another month, still had cable, and I called the cable company back to ask what it would cost to get basic cable. A different operator from before said it would cost something like $30 a month and a $100 hookup fee. I asked why the $100 hookup fee. She said it was because my address does not currently have cable. I told her never mind, I don't want cable unless they waive the hookup fee. She said that she wasn't authorized to waive the fee. I just thanked her and hung up. 4 years later, we still had cable, but we ended up moving out of state for work. Wow, that's so funny. No, sorry, you don't actually have cable. No, I do. And I've had it for 4 years. Like, I'm actually watching it right now. The next one is called Same Punishment for Being 5 minutes late as being 3 hours late. Sure, no problem. So, I'm working for a low-level corporation, about 450 employees. I've been there for 5 years and I've risen to the top of my department's productivity levels. I mention this as it does pertain to the story. Management had a policy that latecomers would be penalized, but that lateness could be excused under some circumstances. circumstances, I was good at my job and I actually loved doing it, so I was more or less a dream employee. I always showed up to work 20 or 30 minutes early because I like to sit in the lunchroom and prepare for my day. Management knew I was almost always early, so if I was late from time to time, and such instances were rare, they'd let it slide, as there was always a valid reason. Now, for some other employees, this latitude wasn't applied. Chronically late employees would get written up and not have their constant lateness excused. They'd complain, of course, but management was firm. They ran an actual meritocracy where more productive employees would experience preferential treatment, and then the business gets sold and we get new management, an international corporation only interested in buying us up, stripping us down and selling off the company. Of course, they denied this constantly, but the fact that over the next 2 years they stripped us down and sold off the company proved that they were lying. New management comes in and has to make a bunch of idiotic changes. One of those changes is that no reasons for being late are accepted, regardless of validity. Anyone that's 5+ minutes late for work would be written up. So at the team meeting where this is explained, I asked, so if someone is 5 minutes late and someone else is 3 hours late, the punishment is the same? And they said yes. From that day on, I stopped coming in early. I'd still head to work at my usual time, but I sat in a local coffee shop instead of my work's lunchroom. This meant that my work missed out because in the past I would often help out by answering questions, even start work early if needed, because I loved my job and the old management were wonderful bosses, but no more of that under new management. In fact, if something did happen, like unexpectedly bad traffic, and I was going to end up being a few minutes late, I'd just say screw it. If being 3 hours late is the same punishment as 5 minutes late, I'd just decide to come in later. I'd call work to tell them I was delayed, and then go out and have a leisurely meal in a restaurant, or run some personal errands, or go shopping, even see a movie, etc. Depending on my mood and how crappy the new management had been lately, what would have been, say, a 7-minute lateness on my part would end up seeing me roll in 3 hours late. Sure, it cost me a few bucks, but I made almost as much in bonuses than I did in hourly salary, so missing out on a few hours here and there didn't bother me too much. I'd come in 3 or 4 hours late and my new bosses would be fuming. Nothing they could do but write me up for the basic tardy, same as they would have if I was 5 minutes late. Yeah, please tell me they realized how ridiculous this is. This subreddit's so fun to read. How a local doctor got the best malicious compliance against my boss. Somewhere around 2007, I was working as a drugstore manager, running the entire front store and the pharmacy. Pay was excellent for someone who was in their early to mid-20s, but the job was also soul-crushing in some stupid ways. A rule came down that cashiers can no longer have drinks at the register. They can drink on their lunch breaks and otherwise shouldn't need water. Come on, what? At the same time, they dialed back the AC, so the store was constantly uncomfortably warm, but not technically dangerous. I had some of the best staff. One lady was roughly 65 and came to me to let me know that she was on medicine that gave her dry mouth, so she needed me to know that if I took her water away, she would really have a hard time being able to talk to customers. She's almost developed a lisp when she couldn't have her water. I told her, no worries, have your water. I'll deal with my boss when he sees you someday. Because he was running 40 stores and mine was generally not a problem store, he only came by every 60 days or so. Eventually, he does swing in and ask her about her water. She says I have a medical condition and I told her it was fine. I also told him I had approved the water. He pulls me into the office to let me know that for her to have the water, she needs a doctor's note. If he sees her with it again without a note, we both get written warnings. He explains this is because not following the company rule can't be a decision made by me. I'm flabbergasted. I'm just the manager in charge of the store. This company made me do drills on how to deal with bombs or shootings, but I can't approve a bottle of water. It must be an exception deemed necessary for medical needs. I explain this is stupid. He actually agrees, but says he's following orders from above. Great. I pull my cashier aside and I tell her what's up. I said, I'm really sorry, but can she please just get her doctor to fax a stupid note over so we can cover our asses? She got a little gleam in her eye and I was excited to see what it meant. Her next shift, she rolls in and says that you're gonna love this. She hands me about 100 copies of a letter that says something along the lines of, I do solemnly state that cashier is medically a human being and requires water on regular intervals while working and not solely during breaks. This was a massive waste of my time and your company should be ashamed of yourself. I will be recommending your competitor as much as humanly possible to my patients for the rest of my natural life. Signed, the doctor. The next 40 were identical letters, each with a different staff member listed as my genius cashier has snagged an old issue with first names and last initials. The rest had a blank space for me to fill in new hire names so our staff could all have drinks on the sales floor. My boss wasn't even mad. None of the higher-ups above him ever mentioned it on a store walk, so I assume it was covered in a meeting of people higher up than me. Yeah, pretty much the top comment. Lol, that's beautiful. Yeah, believe believe it or not, human beings actually do need water. Huge shout out to their coworker, they sound awesome. The next one is called You're Sure It's Mine? Fine, I'll keep it. This happened in 2014. I just lost my job and I was in the process of looking for a new one, but I didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through to the next month, and I'd pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid the bills, and I got a new job shortly after. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill option to send him a check. I sent him a text and I told him it was on the way, and I just assumed that was the end of it. Well, a week went by and he hadn't gotten it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay because I hadn't used it before. So I asked him to wait a few more days and see if it comes. Several days later, it still hadn't gotten there. So I called the bank and I asked them, and they told me I could stop the payment on it for free. So I did. Then I just wrote a personal check and mailed it. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I get a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and I asked them about it, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and that it was a legitimate check and it was mine to keep. At that point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place because there was no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had actually made one. He had no idea what was going on because he hadn't used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google and it finally dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at that point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone auto-corrected it to Sandalwood, and it just happened to be the same numerical address. And because my father's name was listed as the payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account, so that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explain what happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled and we won't be talking about it again." Again, this is a recorded line. I asked if she was sure that they owed me this money. She practically shouted, "Yeah," and I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my bank that day. They didn't try to call me back until about 6 weeks later. I'd been wondering how long it'd take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called me to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was misinformed and she should go back and listen to the recorded calls that I'd made to their office, and I gave her the dates. I'd been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check, and then I hung up. I haven't heard a single thing about it since, and because of that rude person on the phone to you, there's nothing they can do about it. Okay, the next one is called Deal With It or Find a New Job. Easier than you think, bub. As a young adult, I decided to move several hundred miles away on a whim without a new job lined up. Fortunately, the relatives I was living with knew a ton of people in the small town and were able to get me a job within a week at the local grocery store. I was to be a courtesy clerk, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. Immediately, I made friends with co-workers, and some of the customers weren't too bad either. However, management was a different deal. Like the HR manager who would waste a customer's time telling them recipes for the items they have and holding up the line. She would also call me from the back of the store to bag 2 items and help the man barely older than me to his car despite him protesting. There was also John, the general manager. John would be nice in groups, but if he got you alone, his true colours would show. He once berated me for having a 5 o'clock shadow, even though I shaved right before work. My hair's dark and it grows quick. Sorry dude, I can't help nature. After a few months, the night janitor, technically early morning, quit. John decided it would now be my job to polish the floors every morning. My previous job was at a movie theatre, so working from 5 PM to 2 AM was normal. Mornings, not my jam. This would require me to be at work by 4 AM, but I was told it'd be for 1 to 2 months tops. I was even thrown a sweet 5-cent raise for my troubles. How could I decline? After a month, I asked John how the search for a replacement's going. He says probably 2 weeks and everything will be settled. After another month, I ask again. John says the first person fell through and suggests that maybe I know someone who might be looking for a job. I assure him that that's not the case. After the 3rd month, I was completely over it. Again, I approached John and I explained that I can't keep doing this much longer. He replies, "Not my problem. Find someone else or a new job." This pissed me off, but I wasn't in the position to walk out right then. I figured I'd start applying anywhere I could. A couple of days later, possibly even the same day, my relative drags me with them to go look at new cars. While discussing prices and waiting for the sales manager to respond, my relative and the salesperson were all just BSing, and I mentioned what John had told me about the job. The salesperson raised an eyebrow and walked away. Moments later, the sales manager approached me and said they were looking for a detailer and asked me if I was interested. It'd be a regular schedule, no evenings, and higher than even my previous theatre job. As a manager, while my relative executive was signing financial paperwork, I was filling out a new hire packet. I was to begin work on Tuesday of the next week. When I got home, I packed a bag and I began driving to my hometown to visit friends. I knew I wouldn't have to work for about a week because at midnight I called the grocery store and I told them I wouldn't be returning to work, and I said, if you have any questions, please ask John. Epilogue, a year or so after my departure, John was mysteriously no longer working at the store. Nobody knew why, as he had another 5 years before retirement. One day I had to go to the bank to deposit a check and John was the teller. It was so fun to watch him deposit my paycheck from the new employer. No way. Yeah, like the top comment says, not my problem, says the person whose problem it absolutely was. Well done. Yeah, what did they mean? It's 100% their problem. Get a new job then. Yeah, okay. That's so amazing. Okay, let's read one more. This one's called Just Get One Donut, they said. We only need one. Didn't specify the size. It's a small one, but it's my birthday and this is so funny not to share. So I wake up, make a hot pocket, and I'm told I wasn't meant to eat breakfast. Confused, I put it in the fridge. I didn't want to waste it, after which I get ready for the day when my stepdad walks into the apartment with a donut box. I take it saying thanks, obviously, and when I open it, giant donut. It takes up the entire box. Baffled, I show my mum and she has this look of confusion and then realization as she looks at my stepdad and says, I only said one, and to which my stepdad replies, didn't specify the size. Thank you, stepdad, for giant donut. So you're claiming I defrauded the company by booking an extra 3 minutes? No problem. I worked for a water company for 25 years and I was in one of their most productive repair crews. That is until the new manager, let's call him Mr. Numbnut, started. We had a monthly rota where you were on call for 1 week in 4 for emergency repairs out of hours. On the day in question, I started work at 7:30 a.m. on a Friday and I finished work at 3:15 a.m. Saturday morning, so a pretty long ass shift. I get to work Tuesday morning and I get called into the office by Mr. Numbnuts and informed that according to my vehicle tracker, I'd left the yard at 3:12 a.m. and not 3:15 a.m., which is an attempt to defraud the company. As you can imagine, I was absolutely fuming at this level of BS. I told him that at the time I was covered in mud and sweat and I just wanted to get home after completing a monster shift for the company. And was he genuinely making a crap storm over 3 minutes? He said he was making me aware that I could be fired for it. Cue the malicious compliance. I can't wait for this. I said that if we're going to be this petty, you can take me off the emergency contact list for extra coverage and I won't be starting 20 minutes early each day either. I'll now be clocking in at exactly 7:30 a.m. and I shall be heading out at exactly 5:30 p.m. No deviation whatsoever, and you can explain to your bosses why productivity is down and you're struggling to get coverage for emergencies. We'll then see how important your 3 minutes are when they're costing the company money. Little did I realize at the time, but the guy's job was bonus related and linked to our productivity, which tanked after that because all the other gangs followed my lead, except the brown-nosed gangs, obviously. 3 weeks go by with an absolute crap showing customer service complaints about their work not being carried out in a timely manner. My productivity dropped from 7 jobs per day down to 4, and Mr. Numbnuts gets called in by his bosses to try to explain what the hell's going on. He tried to spin some BS story that I turned all the guys against him for no reason and that this was the result. Little did he know that I'd actually trained with his boss when he first started at the company 15 years ago, when he wanted to come out and find out what we do and experience how hard the job is. He surprised me by working a full month on the repair crews before going back to the office. Anyhow, the boss calls me in to find out what is really going on, so I explained how he'd used the tracker to monitor what time I'd left the yard and that I'd guesstimated my finish time and overestimated it by 3 minutes because I was absolutely knackered after working a shift from hell on coal. Conclusion, the manager was let go for misuse of the tracking system as it's only supposed to be used for emergencies and not monitoring, and we had the on-call system reviewed to cut the hours we were having to work. Wow, so they lost their job because of this? Yeah, I bet they're wishing they didn't do that. Like the top comment says, when will new managers learn to not screw with veteran employees? Probably never. Yeah, and also this comment, that power move turned into an out of power move for your boss. The next one's called Fine Then, I'll just take the paternity leave. Many years ago, I was a sales manager for the now defunct Circuit City. My wife and I were expecting our first child. This was 1999. My wife was leaving her place of employment as she was planning on staying home with our daughter once she was born. Being our first child, I wanted to be home for a little while at the beginning. As I was talking to my store manager to arrange having some time off when my daughter was born, I asked for a week off. I was met with opposition and I told I could only have 2 days off because we don't have extra management coverage, yet we somehow cover people's vacations. This was absolutely ridiculous, and luckily I had done my homework. The way that the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act law, is written, the parents can take up to 12 weeks of maternity or paternity leave, and their job is guaranteed to be waiting for them when they return. return. I believe this is meant to be combined between the parents, but since my wife was leaving her job permanently and not taking maternity leave, that left 12 weeks available for me to take. Paternity leave is rarely ever done because it's most often unpaid leave. I, however, had plenty of paid time off saved up, so I informed the store manager that I'll be filing for paternity leave under FMLA and would in fact be taking 12 weeks off and would be using my saved PTO to cover my income. He tried to argue with me, but I told him he should probably go contact HR. He returned later that day and sheepishly asked me if I'd accept the week I originally asked for. I told him that I would accept either 2 weeks or 12, and that was his choice. I ended up with 2 weeks, and that store manager learned that though I was young at the time, I wasn't going to be pushed around, and that reasonable requests should be reasonably accepted. Wow, that's so awesome. No, okay, I'm definitely taking my leave. Yeah, like the top comment says, I would have taken the full 12. OP responded, it would have burned up all of my paid time off to do it. I really wanted to save my time. With that said, I was prepared to take the full 12 if I had to. I forget how fun these stories are. Send my laptop back after a layoff. Okay, I was recently laid off from my remote job. It was a last minute video chat with HR, and then my entire access was cut off as soon as the call ended. No time to say goodbye to anyone, no time to retrieve any personal files from my laptop. Crappy severance. But then the kicker was telling me that I needed to ship their laptop back ASAP. I've had other companies send prepaid laptop boxes to return equipment or just say keep it. This company expected me to waste my time to package up the computer and then find a place to ship it back. It seems like a lot to ask of someone you just got rid of like a piece of trash. They gave me their shipping account code and told me I can just charge it on their account. I eventually get around to going across town only to be told the code doesn't work and I have to pay out of pocket. At this point, I'm very annoyed with this process. The company tells me I can pay out of pocket and they'll reimburse me. Okay, I can do that. So I found the most expensive option I could find and added some bathroom tiles into the box to make it extra heavy and had it shipped. I also shipped my mouse and power supply separately in the same expensive fashion. Lots of extra weight. The total cost was $840. Cost of the laptop was probably around $500. Anyways, F them, I did as I was told. Maybe next time they won't fire people and then expect them to drive around town to return their stuff. But so you had to pay for this and just hope that they did send you the money? That's so dicey. It says in the comments that they did get reimbursed. But yeah, imagine if you spent $840 on this and somehow they didn't reimburse you and you still couldn't get any personal stuff off it. God, that's so frustrating. Hey, why did they send this with tiles in it? Why is this costing the company $800? The next one's called Let's Save $50 a month on a cell phone bill and risk causing 6 figures in operational damage and damage our reputation with paying customers instead. First, I love working for this company. Honestly, I really do. It's a great company, great culture. This is just simply an example of bean counters looking to save $50 a month, getting things so horribly wrong at times that they cause 6 figures of lost productivity and damage the reputation with paying customers. Even after it happens, there's no change in policy. I joined a new company in January of this year before working for them as a consultant. During my onboarding, I'd asked the hiring manager if I'd be provided with a company cell phone or if I'd be able to expense out my monthly cell phone bill. He looked into it and HR told him this particular position is not eligible for a company cell phone as it does not require after-hours support. This answer actually made sense. I don't need to get involved in day-to-day operation support in my role. They also literally never called me once during my whole tenure as a consultant after hours. So great, I don't want to work after hours. Up until last week, that policy was upheld, like it had been during my time as a consultant. There was never a "we were trying to reach you yesterday" when I logged in the next day or any emails asking for my help after hours, so I was loving it. I want to repeat, this is not a dig towards the company. They upheld their end of the bargain this entire time, but here's the malicious compliance part of this story. I have no cell phone number listed in my email signature nor on my internal company profile because, hey, I don't have a company cell phone. I have a desk phone, but that's it. I talk with a lot of IT vendors in my role and I don't need them calling me on my personal line. I also didn't install Outlook on my personal phone or any company apps. So last week, a major update was applied to one of the platforms that fell under my purview. The actual maintenance is performed by an operations manager and their team. Things went smooth in our QA and test environment. I signed off, my boss signed off, so everything was ready, set and go. Major updates come in. Someone incorrectly performed a few steps, even though that same person performed them just fine in QA. Things started going wrong, horribly wrong. I wasn't responding to emails, I had no phone number listed anywhere, so they did the troubleshoot on their own. In hindsight, the fix was relatively simple and I definitely would have been able to guide the team. The error wasn't even related to the update. They just went down a completely different path to resolve the issue, thinking the update was the root cause. It would have taken a few hours, but we would have fixed it. But But in the moment, as things were going wrong, in panic and trying to recover from the incorrectly performed steps, somehow, please don't ask me how, the backup was corrupted in this process as well, and they couldn't use it to recover. Dear God, they had to go pull tape backups, which is excruciatingly slow to recover from and a week old. Monday morning, I log into my laptop and I notice the holy hell that's going on. Oh crap! I get on a call with the operations manager. Operations manager is level-headed, no blame is thrown. Again, as I said, great company, great culture. Asked what happened to me. I told him I have no company phone. I asked for it and they said no. He just had to shake his head. Organizationally, he and I are at the same level. He just has a reporting structure and I don't. My boss and I got on a call for a debrief and he asked the same question. I gave the same answer. No company phone. He's the one that told me that my position was ineligible for a company phone, as I was not required for after-hours support. All told, it took the team 5 days to recover everything, rerun all the transactions that were lost from the source systems, another 1.5 days for the business teams to validate that all was well, and match up all the numbers. My boss did ask me if I had a personal cell phone. I tell him no. I do, but it's the principle of the whole thing. As I said, I deal with a lot of external vendors now. I don't need them bothering me on my personal phone. During business hours, we communicate over Teams and Zoom and WebEx, and my landline never gets used as I'm barely in the office. He didn't question me further. So all in all, about 7 days of lost system access, productivity, operational reporting, inability to efficiently serve customers, inability to efficiently deploy frontline employees, etc., etc. One of the business directors was still putting together the operational impact, but he figured it was easily 6 figures, all over $50 for a monthly cell phone bill for a bunch of corporate employees who they might need to call once in a blue moon. The funny part is the majority of IT are eligible for a cell phone because they're required for after-hours support. I estimate maybe 60 of us across all of IT aren't eligible due to our roles. Bean counters, gotta love them. That being said, I did give my personal number to the operations manager for future emergencies. At the end of the day, I don't want my team and friends to needlessly suffer if I can help. Yeah, your boss should have your number, but also not be on call. Yeah, like this comment says, my boss knows my personal phone number. As far as I know, it's on my file that HR has. I'm not on call, but on some very rare occasions, something important has come up during off hours, for which my help could be very useful. On these occasions, my boss called me, apologized profusely for disturbing me, and asked, and he made it very clear that he was asking a favor and not requiring me to do anything if I'd be able to come in. Afterwards, he made sure I took at least 1 full day of comp time, even if I only worked a few hours. In my opinion, that's how it should be. In 5 years with the company, I think I only got 2 such calls. I think it's fair that my boss can contact me, and anyone else who needs my help can ask my boss, and he can decide if it's important enough to bug me about. The next one is called I refuse to cook and chilled with men. I, female 28, dislike cooking. Don't get me wrong, I cook for survival, but it's not something I like or enjoy. At my in-laws, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are stay-at-home partners and they love to cook. Neither of their husbands lift a finger to help and they like it that way. Before marriage, I was treated as a guest, but since my marriage 6 months ago, they expect, want, and demand that I cook with them. First few times I went along with it, but I hated it. It took 5 to 7 hours to make food and do dishes, so when they planned to get together last weekend and discuss the menu, I suggested ordering in. This way everyone can be more relaxed. They looked at me like I insulted them. I told them they can cook, but to give me a list of what I should make and I'll buy it. They said that's not how traditions work, and if I hate to do it, I can relax with the men. And that's what I did, much to their anger. I helped setting place and serving, but that was it. As we were eating, my husband commented how good something tasted. Mother-in-law immediately went on about how I wouldn't be cooking anything for him. When he said he can cook for himself, sister-in-law chimed in with how her husband or dad never had to cook a day in their life, how marrying lazy women like me has ruined his manhood. Oh my god, what? I looked at my husband and we both laughed. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law are blasting our phones over my arrogance and calling him spineless. Even my mum is taking their side now, but guess who don't care? Oh my god, that's unbelievable. So if your husband genuinely enjoys cooking and likes to cook for themselves, that means they've lost their manhood and you guys are spineless? No way, that's ridiculous. Pretty much everything they were saying was such a load of BS. So yeah, they don't want their partners to lift a finger, but not everybody's like that. And so many guys do want to cook, obviously, and for them to be so rude about it, that's so awful. Wow, that's so frustrating. The next one is called Ignore the Time Difference in the Evening. I'll ignore it in the morning. Not me, but my father-in-law's story. In the 1970s, before email and faxes, my father-in-law Carl worked as a trust agent for a bank in the Midwest, which is on Eastern Time, ET. He handled trust and estates for bank customers, including one older lady. Her son-in-law Bruton lived in California, which is on Pacific Time, PT. PT, 3 hours behind Cole, and managed his mother-in-law's estate on her behalf. Bruton used to call Cole with questions, which is not a problem, except Bruton will call Cole at home at 8 PM ET, expecting him to answer questions. Cole would be at home eating dinner or spending time with his family, so Bruton's calls were unwelcome. Cole would explain the time difference and said that Bruton should call at 5 PM ET, not PT, but Bruton always ignored Cole's requests and demanded that Cole call him back first thing in the morning. So what, they just don't understand time zones? Cole was nice and would wait until 11 AM ET to give Bruton time to get settled in his own office until he decided he'd had enough. The day after Bruton's latest call, Cole went to his office extra early, got the information, and then promptly at 8 AM, Cole called Bruton's house. A sleepy Bruton answered the phone and croaked, "Hello? Good morning, Bruton." Cole all but hollered into the phone. "What time is it?" Bruton groaned. "It's 8, Cole said. "But it's 5 in the morning here." "Huh, so it is. I guess there's a 3-hour time difference. But you said you wanted these answers first thing in the morning, and it's 8 AM here, so I thought I'd give you a call." Bruton never called past 5 PM again. Wow, that's so funny. So yeah, definitely wasn't an honest mistake. They knew what they were doing, because I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if they still kept doing this, because it sounded like they just weren't thinking about it. But oh yeah, they were thinking about it. The next one is called, "I'll lose my job for clocking in 1 minute late. I hate to do this. Punctuality is a good habit. It shows discipline and commitment. I worked in a warehouse where you had to clock in before your start time. There was a computerized process and you would lose your job if you clocked in late more than twice a year, even if you were only 1 minute late. Now, I pride myself on punctuality, but I was running a bit late for the 3rd time in 10 months. A man's gotta hustle, and I simply called my employer and told him that I was feeling sick and needed to take a day off. My state has paid accrued sick leave. The fallout was that I kept my job. It's been a single year since, and I got paid for a full day without working. What a ridiculous system. So yeah, if you're gonna be a minute late, you're actually encouraged to stay home, because either you're a minute late and you eventually lose your job, or you take the entire day off because you're a minute late. We read so much unbelievable stuff, and I love it so much. The next one is called, "Give me a parking ticket for a spot I paid for. I dare you." About 10 or so years ago, I went to a concert an hour away from me in Indianapolis. Decided to make a day of it, going to several museums and spots around the city, each time paying for parking in a garage for 2 or so hours and then going to meander around the area. Finally, I go park close to the venue and paid for parking until the time it was free. Total, I probably paid $40 to $50 for parking throughout the day. Enjoyed the concert, but came back to a parking ticket on my car. I think this is odd, but I'm tired and I chalk it up to being a mistake. But I decided to take photos of my parking spot. Both spots on either side were taken, and all the signage, and head home for the evening, figuring that I'd sort it out in the morning. The next morning, I reviewed the ticket, the photo of my spot, and the parking receipt. The ticket did not line up to the spot that my car was located, and my receipt shows that I had valid parking at the time of the ticket, so I submit an appeal thinking this will be easy. It's obvious that a mistake was made. The appeal was denied. The ticket was for the spot that was not paid for, ergo it stood. I called the office and the lady said they did not make a mistake, as my receipt showed that I paid for spot X1 and the ticket was for spot X. I asked about the photo proof that my car was in spot X1. She said, "Well, you could have moved the car." Note that the parking receipt included my license plate number and everything. Think Park Mobile-like system. I noted that there were cars in spots on either side of me and that the entire street was full because of the concert. And honestly, I don't think they even bothered to look at the photo. Even had that not been the case, I had proof that the license plate had a paid parking spot. No matter what, no dice. I'm feeling petty over this $25 parking ticket at this point, so I called Visa and I asked if I could retract the amount I paid for the time that I had parked, since it didn't count. I submitted all the evidence and documentation to Visa. Visa, in what was the greatest thing Visa has ever done in my opinion, they agreed that if my parking receipt and transaction number wasn't proof I had paid for parking, then clearly I'd paid for a service I didn't receive, and they extended my initial request of cancelling the one transaction to include all the parking spots I had paid for through their system that day, valued it more than the parking ticket, and then they filed a formal complaint on my behalf with a letter explaining why they're refunding me. It wouldn't have been nearly as satisfying if I hadn't spent the entire day playing tourist in the city and racking up a large parking bill all with the same vendor. Oh my god, why are people like this? The audacity of the parking company. Also, this comment, fun fact, if Visa has to do a chargeback, they'll tack on a $40 fee on top of the refund. So not only did they lose $50 for the parking, they may have also lost 40 times the number of payments. Yeah, and hopefully they did. They can't think they can do stuff like this. That's bloody outrageous. The next one says, manager says to be off the clock by 1 PM. I work in a barbecue restaurant as the pit master, so I run the smokers and handle all raw meat preparation. I have to get there by 5 or 6 AM depending on the day in order to have food ready to open the restaurant at 11. Well, the general manager, GM, decided she was spending too much on labor and needed to cut my hours. As such, she told me at around 2 p.m. on a Thursday the following, I need you to clock out by 1 p.m. every day, no matter what. I asked for it in writing and I got it. So the next day I went to the head chef when I got there and told him that the GM said I had to be out by 1 p.m. no matter what, and showed him the signed note. I set an alarm on my phone and I got to work. I finished all the prep for the next day and I was starting on the cleaning when my alarm went off. Now the pit area looked awful. The walls had some smoke stains that come off pretty easily with degreaser, but build up over time. The cooler floor had some blood on it that needed to be cleaned up before it spoiled and started smelling bad. My table had some seasoning left on it from where I seasoned the pork for the overnight load. The wall still had bits of skin, gristle, etc. stuck to them, and the trash can was full. I told the head chef it was 1 p.m. and I had to go. He looked in the pit and said, yep, this is what I expected, but he let me clock out and go. This goes on for about a week, with the pit looking worse and worse each day. Then the district manager, DM, comes in on my day off. The head chef told me that the DM immediately started on the GM for the pit looking awful, and that the pitmaster needed to stay until the pit was clean, no matter what. So I got it in writing, and I'm now currently working till about 2:30 p.m. every day, doing the full cleaning I was doing before again, lol. Yeah, like sorry, but it actually does take time. Interviewer accuses me of parking in the handicap spot and tells me to prove it. A few years ago while I was in school and job hunting, I got an interview at a company for office work, filing, answering phones, setting appointments, etc. I was looking forward to getting an office job instead of a retail or fast food job. The building had big window walls that overlooked the parking lot so you could see cars pulling in and parking. I pull into the parking lot and I park my car. I get out and I walk into the office. Now as I'm walking in, I note that there's a car parked in the handicap space in front of the office. The car looks just like mine, so I should note it. So I walk in and I'm greeted by the manager, who kind of gives me a scowling look. It made me uneasy a little as we walk back to his office. We sit down and he's asking me questions in a bit of a clipped tone. He seems annoyed by my answers and I don't understand what's going on at this point. Finally he says, do you always park in handicapped spaces? I'm confused, so I ask him what he means. He goes on a rant about how entitled I am for parking in the handicap spot at a potential place of employment, and I'm just getting even more lost. I asked him what's going on because I didn't park in the handicap spot. I'm parked in the lot. He argues with me and says that he watched my car pull in and saw me park there. I again told him that I didn't park in a handicap spot, but the car that I walked by in that spot looked similar to my car. He says that he knows that he saw me park and get out of the car. At this point, I'm over this whole interview. I knew this would be a cluster, you know what, of a place to work if this guy's managing it. And then he goes a step further and says, prove it. I grab my purse and I get my keys out. I don't even bother waiting for him and I just leave the office. He's jogging after me and hurried outside to stand and wait. His face went from smug arrogance to surprised Pikachu real quick as I walked past the car in the handicap spot. He asked me where I was going as I walked over to my car, and then I turned around and I made eye contact as I hit the button on my keys to unlock it and got in. He was starting to walk over to me, calling out that he was sorry about the misunderstanding, but I put my car in reverse and I left. I didn't even make eye contact with him as I drove away. Edit to add, this was my second interview, so the manager knows what I and my car look like. I don't know why he said that he saw me. I'm assuming it was a lie to get me to admit that I did it. I've pondered this many a night, trust me. Well, you 100% did the right thing. Like, yeah, if that's any sign of what it's going to be like to work for them, then no thank you. And also, I love how you made eye contact with them when you got in the car. They would have been like, oh, I messed up really bad. Story number 2 is called, I used my meal plan to feed over 120 less fortunate people. This happened my freshman year of college about 20 years ago. My university had just invested in a big new dining hall, and to help pay for their investment, required all new students to buy a 150 meal plan both semesters. This was a big financial burden being from a lower middle class family, but my parents pulled funds to help me out and made it happen. Shortly into my first semester, I found out from my friends that the meals you didn't use didn't roll over. Since I lived off campus, I knew that I wouldn't be able to use them all. Heading into November, I realized I would end up with 60 to 75 meals left over, and I complained about this a lot to family and friends because it seemed like such a waste. In comes the plan. My freshman year of college was also my cousin's senior year, and we hung out pretty often. He was the biggest trickster and prankster type you ever met. One night while we were drinking, he says, what if you brought a bunch of homeless people to use up your meals? How much would that piss off those self-righteous you-know-whats? We laughed all night, but the more I thought about the idea, the more I really started to like it. We talked all weekend about it and we hatched a plan. On Monday morning, we went down to the local Salvation Army around the corner. I've grown to really despise this organization, but in the early 2000s in small town USA, it's what we had. We told the lady at the desk that we'd like to feed people in need with my meal plan. She was hesitant at first, but she said that she was working with people that this would be a huge blessing to, especially during the holiday season. She helped me organize 2 days the following week where around 30 people would meet to eat up in the dining hall. I would wear a certain hat so they could find me, and we would go eat. The day finally arrived and all kinds of people were there. There were homeless people in tattered clothes. There were families with kids that seemed excited to eat out. There was even one family that I'll always remember that seemed embarrassed to take a hand out, but I made an effort to talk to everybody and make them feel welcomed. At noon, we headed into the dining hall. I walked up to the lady at the entrance and said, "These people are with me. They're my friends. I'd like to swipe them all in." She looked confused but reluctantly said okay. To say that we got every reaction humanly possible would be an understatement. There were staff that were obviously annoyed with the influx of diners. There were students that were laughing. There were students that were giving me the silent clap. There were snobbish faculty members that seemed to be disgusted at the type of people coming in. I didn't care at all. Eventually, a head staff member came up and said they knew what I was doing and they didn't like it. I said, "These are my friends eating with me. I paid for these meals. Am I doing anything wrong?" She was stumped. The next day, the same situation happened with the same reactions. It seemed that I'd caused quite a stir on campus, and it just so happened that the university president was eating there that day. She came up to me and said that even though she would ask me that I tell my friends not to do the same with their meals, as the staff couldn't handle the influx of diners, she was proud that her students had the heart to do something for others like that. The following semester, I did the exact same thing. I even used my meals sparingly so I could bring more people. The one memory that will always stick out in my head is the family with the little kids that were so excited to go to the pizza bar and soft serve ice cream machine, giggling the whole time. To this day, it's still one of the proudest moments of my life. Me and my friends and family still have a drink and chuckle over the story and the snooty, angry reactions that I got. Oh, that's so awesome. I had no idea that we were going to read a wholesome post on here today. Wow, good on you. That's so cool. What a beautiful thing to do. Yeah, it's weird that some of them were all snobby and annoyed about it. I would have thought more of them would have been proud of you too. Like, you're very obviously doing something that's super good. Yeah, wow, didn't expect to read that today, but I'm so happy that we did. The third story today is called Put in My 2 Weeks Notice. Covert narcissistic supervisor reveals himself. I, 30 female, have been working at a super small construction company for the past 2 years. I've put my best foot forward every day and I never had any issues with anyone in the company. As of 3 months ago, they moved me from an infield coordinator to an accounting position. It was an emergency move as one of the employees stole $80K from the company and they needed an immediate replacement. My new supervisor, we'll call her Mary, 34 female, was always super kind to me and we've become pretty good in-work friends. Well, these past couple of months have been hell. I hate the new position and to be fair, I'm not very good at it, so I found a new position and I've been keeping it a secret for a while. I let the owner know first and he was super kind and receptive to it. The issue started when Mary got word of it. She immediately cornered me and started going on this rant saying things like, "Why didn't you tell me? You're being incredibly unfair and selfish. I can't believe you would do this to us. This is unacceptable. Don't ask me for a referral because you're not getting one from me." I politely told her that the opportunity was something I simply couldn't pass up. She then went to the owner and asked for any details I might have given him about the new company and the new position, I believe to try to sabotage me leaving, and thankfully I hadn't discussed any details about it with anyone. It was awkward after that, but I didn't think anything of it. The next day was when things took a turn for the worst. Mary decided to be petty and removed any of my authorizations to any accounts that I had, so I couldn't perform any of my daily tasks. I didn't want to leave on a sour note, so I brought it up to the owner as Mary was out of office. He reauthorized my accounts and I continued to work. Mary was back the following day and was completely livid that I went around her and talked directly to the owner. Her actions towards me would only get worse from here on out. How does somebody like that even keep a job? Like, this is awful. The next day I came in to notice that my desk was moved and my computer access was taken away yet again. Cue the malicious compliance, since I couldn't do any of my daily tasks and I really didn't feel like dealing with a screaming Mary. I was on Reddit for pretty much the whole day. At the end of the day, Mary came into my new back storage office and said, "Busy day today?" I know mine was. I just smiled and said, "Yep, exhausting." She did not like that response and went to the owner to say that I was purposefully not doing my job and that my last 2 weeks would be pointless, so we should just let her go. Me. The owner disagrees, calls me into his office, and after I explained what she had done, he gave me access again and told Mary to work from home. Another day goes by. It's extremely peaceful now that Mary is working remote, but unfortunately this does not mean that my day was getting any easier. Instead of taking my access away, she had IT start forwarding all of my emails to other employees in other departments that had nothing to do with my specific position. At this this point, I only had 3 days left, so I just took it as, okay, this sucks for them, but it's on Mary's head if anybody has any questions. I looked at my paid time off and I had way more than I thought, so why not use those for my last days? And that's what I did. I was originally supposed to let all vendors know and start forwarding them off to the appropriate people and interview second round candidates for my position, but not anymore. The owner was completely okay with it and understood that Mary was being toxic and that he was going to have a talk with her about her attitude and position if this continues. Now, with my last 2 days and me being on paid time off, I finally thought that I was safe from Mary, but lo and behold, she was still holding a massive grudge, as if me leaving my position was a personal attack on her. She called me at 4:30 in the morning and left me a voicemail saying that our company was having an accounting emergency and that I need to come in immediately. I called her back about 4 hours later, which she was fuming about, and went on a massive rant about how I'm extremely entitled. I will never get anywhere with my attitude. Oh my god, how dare they? She's embarrassed for our company to say that I ever worked here. Oh my god, this is unbelievable. That if she ever finds out where I'll be working, she'll make sure that I'm fired and will never get a job in this town again. I laughed at her and she went ballistic, like when you take a 4-year-old's toy away. She was screaming so loud that her voice was shaking, saying silly things like I have no respect for her or the company and that I'll rot in hell. Oh my god, what is up with them? I hung up on her once she started bringing my family into things. I called the owner and I explained to him what happened, which he wasn't shocked about, and he told me that when she came in that morning that she was going on a rampage like the Tasmanian devil. After finding out why she was freaking out, he promptly fired her. I was shocked since it was such a small company and he definitely needed her. I had heard from another company that she ended up destroying a bunch of company property on her way out, and now she's facing a lawsuit due to the damages. I'm so thankful she revealed her true self to everyone and that I'm far away from that company and her. Oh my god, that's the best ending I feel like we've ever seen. Yeah, wow, that's so awesome, and it's so good that the owner was so switched on with this. So bloody awful the stuff that they put you through, but yeah, they 1,000,000% deserve to be fired. And in the comment section they said that they pretty much did 80% of their job as well. So yeah, when you said that you were gonna leave and they actually had to do their work, they start flipping out. Even though this did have a good ending, you still shouldn't have to put up with stuff like this. Like, that's such an awful situation. Okay, story number 4 is called You Want Proof That My Fiance Is Sick? You got it. I, 25 female, am engaged to my fiance Joey, 26 male. He recently had surgery on his leg and hip, but there were complications and he's been sick and weak since. We try not to ask too much for help, but this has put a big financial strain on us to the point where we've spent our wedding savings on his recovery. We're fine with this because if we have to have a courthouse wedding, we're cool. We just want him to be healthy. But we did set up a temporary donation page to help with some of the expenses. A friend of mine, Carla, 25 female, donated $10 about a month ago, and I reached out to her to thank her. Last week we posted an update, not asking for more money, but just to let people know that Joey has had another setback, and the doctors are creating an all-new treatment plan for him. Carla commented publicly and said the following: I'm beginning to question if he has actually been sick this long, or if y'all are just trying to get more money for your wedding. Who takes this long to recover from surgery, especially when you're an athlete? Wow, the audacity. I said, I'm very offended and appalled that you would accuse us of faking anything. Maybe you're just having a bad day or a moment of bad judgment, but how shamefully low of you. She replied, I want my donation back unless you can show proof that he's sick, in a hospital bed or sitting in a doctor's office, anything. I sent her $10 to get her off our backs, but I also sent her a video with Joey's approval, the proof that she asked me for. One of the concerns that Joey has had is that he will get severely nauseous if he eats protein, which is what he's supposed to be doing, and when he overexerts himself, which he does sometimes. I sent her a video of him dry heaving into an emesis bag in the middle of PT. Now, one of his doctors asked us to record the PT so they can see the progression of him not feeling well, to hopefully make some adjustments. So I didn't just take this video to send it to Carla, but to me it seemed like solid proof that she was asking for it. What the hell? I have emetophobia. I didn't know this, and this just triggered me so bad. I hope you're happy with yourself. I feel like I've been traumatized. I said, so now you have $10 more to process this trauma in therapy? Oh my god. Carla is not a friend. Hell no. And like the top comment says, oh, you have emetophobia? Where's your proof? Either a written diagnosis or a testimonial from your primary care provider. Otherwise, you're just doing it for attention and sympathy. Yeah, like that friendship is not worth the trouble. You might even say that it's not worth $10, but yeah, that's such a lame thing to do. Just being awful, and also being awful publicly. Okay, story number 5 is called Fired If I Don't Work That Day. Made it my last day. A few years back, I worked on a relief crew on a drilling rig. The rig ran around 24 hours a day with 3 different shifts. Crews work 6 days and then 2 days off. My crew would replace a working crew so they could have their 2 days off. So we worked mornings 2 days, then afternoons and then nights. It was common to find someone to take a shift if you wanted an extra day off, but the replacement had to have the same abilities. A crew had a driller, a derrick hand, a motorman, a chain hand and a floor hand. People started as floor hand, and as they learned they would work their way up with more responsibility and more pay. Sometimes when someone changed companies they might take a lower position, so it was common to have someone with derrick hand capabilities working motor or chain. In September, my wife asked me about the chances of getting off for Christmas. I checked the calendar and my days off fell on December 24 and 25. Done deal, I have it scheduled off. Then I decided to sweeten the pot. I found a guy who would work December 22 and 23 for me. Also found someone who would work 26 and 27. I took this to my driller who agreed that they could work for me. With my 6 days off, I could drive 400 miles to visit family. Things were looking pretty sweet. Too sweet. The other guys on my crew were in the same position, so they all tried to find replacements, and 2 were successful. Unfortunately, the driller only had 3 other guys on the rig who could work for him, and none of them wanted to help. He got mad and said that he couldn't get the time off, so none of us could have it off. I reminded him that he'd already approved of my time, and he said that it was cancelled, and if I didn't work on December 23rd, then I was a run-off MF, fired. I told him, fine, I'll work the 23rd, but that'll be my last day of work. Consider this my 3 months of notice. At work, nothing much was said for the next few weeks. Outside of work, I was networking and found another job I could start the first week of January. All was set at the end of my shift on the 23rd. I emptied my work locker and I said my goodbyes. The driller barely acknowledged me. Went home and drove to see family the next day. Spent a relaxing week there and then came back to start my new job. About the end of January, I went to a friend's birthday party. There I saw one of my old crew. He asked me when I was going to go back to work. The driller thought I was sulking around and would come crawling back soon. He never hired a replacement and they'd been working short-handed for over a month. I said he better hire somebody. I wasn't playing games, and when I said I quit, I meant it. Yeah, and like the top comment says, this is what happens when management treats skilled employees like garbage. They lose them. And the bloody ego on them as well. Like, oh yeah, they'll come crawling back. They're probably sulking. Yet really sounds like you did the right thing. And surely you'd be pretty hard to replace. Like the driller really messed up. Story number 6 is called We Only Speak to an Attorney. Okay then. I was in a very bad car accident in 2021. I ended up with a 5-day hospital stay and had to have months of physical therapy and follow-up care with a number of specialists. Most of the time, getting records, setting appointments, pre-authorization, or anything related to my care was pretty simple and didn't involve much, and almost always could be authorized by my name and my birth date. I called a provider who had billed my insurance incorrectly so they wouldn't pay for it, and I was getting stuck with the bill. The call went something like this. Company, hello, please be advised this call may be recorded for training and quality purposes. How may I help you today? Me, I recently got care from so-and-so person at so-and-so location, and there was some incorrect billing, so I'm being billed for it and not the insurance company. Company, can I please have your name and birth date? I provided. I'm unable to speak with you about this matter. Me, what? Why not? Company, I am only authorized to talk to an attorney about this matter. Cue malicious compliance. What the hell? Okay then, I'm representing myself for all legal manners. Now please discuss this matter with me. Silence for about 4 seconds. 1 moment, sir. I get put on hold for 3 minutes, and when they come back, we get straight to discussing my issue and get it quickly resolved. I don't think they'd run into that before and they had to figure out if that loophole counted. It does, and it always should. You have to have an attorney, my butt. Oh my god, and it says in the comment section, it ended up being a bill that was charging me over 50 grand, and insurance ended up paying somewhere around $500. Wow, so no wonder they wanted to talk to an attorney about it. They messed up so bad. That's unbelievable. And also they said it was handled in like 2 minutes. Wow, well done, that's so good. I need a doctor's note to work from home for more than 2 days while I have an unidentified, presumably contagious illness. If you insist, it's a tale as old as capitalism. My job, which to be fair, I freaking adore working at, and I'm so grateful for and happy at, requires a doctor's note because I've been sick and working from home for 2 days. Now I haven't just had a minor cold or flu. Several days ago I came down with the worst cold and flu symptoms you can imagine, and things start going downhill from there. It got to the point where I have now been to the ER 2 days in a row because of tonsillitis and excruciating pain brought on by swallowing tiny sips of water. It's not great, and despite a whole battery of swabs and tests, the doctors don't know what the underlying bacteria or virus causing these symptoms is. Obviously, there's no way in hell that I want to infect my co-workers with this plague, so I told HR that I'll be working from home until I'm feeling better. Since my job can be done 100% remotely, they hit me back with the ever famous, if you need to work from home for more than 2 days in in a week, you'll need a doctor's note since it's against our policy. My first instinct was to just go down into work looking, sounding, and feeling like death, but A, I don't want to infect my colleagues, and B, I legitimately believed that I'd pass out on my walk to work and I'd have to be taken to the hospital yet again. Instead, I spoke to the ER doctor from earlier this evening, my second visit in as many days. I asked him how long he thought that I should stay away from work or work from home, and then I told him I needed a note so I could stay home. He had a brief flash of vaguely furious "what the hell" across his face at the idea that my job would force someone as sick as I am to come in and risk the health of those around me, and then assured me that he'd write the note. I was thinking it'd be the basic they should continue to work from home until the end of the week. Nah, bro came through for me. He wrote a note saying that I should be off work for at minimum another week, and then added the piece de resistance: infectious disease requires more time than 2 days to improve. Wow, what a legend. And yeah, you don't need to be working from home, you need to be not working. The doctor's like, what the hell? You're having some time off. Story number 2 is called Religious Workplace Wouldn't Give Me Time Off for My Grandma's Death. This was a few years ago, but I'm still salty about it. I was doing out of school care with kids. I knew my grandma's health was going downhill. I informed my work that in the near future I would need to take some time off and drive the 12 hours to my hometown to see my family. I got a call a few weeks later that the time was coming and I needed to go say my goodbyes. I told my work. At first they were fine. Then when I was in my hometown, my grandmother passed away. I was so close with her and I took it very hard. My work told me that I get 3 unpaid days off and then I have to come back after it. Now keep in mind, it's a childcare company that values religion and family, blah blah blah. I told them I was not mentally ready to come back. I didn't want to deal with all the kids' questions, and even when you try to hide your sadness, they know, they're smart. So I went to a walk-in clinic and I explained my situation to my doctor, who was beyond pissed off that she even needed to write a note for me to take time off. I told her a week should be fine. She said, I'll write 2 weeks just in case. Emailed a copy of the doctor's note to my work and took the full 2 weeks. They were so salty after I came back. Don't sit there and praise your amazing values when you don't even have basic human decency. Yeah, oh god, that sucks. Also, I was not expecting them to be so similar. So what we've learned so far is workplace bad, doctor good. But yeah, that's right though, this is so bad. And the fact that they're not understanding, so when you get back there, they're upset at you. That's unbelievable. Like honestly, how dare they? That's so bad. The next one is called The Time I Was a Victim of Malicious Compliance, and it still makes me laugh. About 30 years ago, I was an admin and facilities manager of a Royal Mail sorting office, and one day every one of the liquid soap dispensers in the toilet was empty, so I found a passing cleaner and I told him, not my job, that's the night cleaner's job to fill them up. Yeah, well he obviously didn't do it, so you need to go to the cleaning cupboard, get some soap and make sure there's some in the dispensers so people can wash their hands. I go back upstairs to my ivory tower, and 5 minutes later I get a phone call to say that I need to go sort out the liquid soap dispensers. I go back downstairs and in each liquid soap dispenser there's a bar of solid soap. Wow, that's so funny. Like, yeah, I'll put soap in them for ya, even though it's not my job. And how could you not laugh at that? That's so funny. I think this is the first one we've ever read from this perspective. So at what point did you realize that, you were in the wrong? Pretty fast, I'm assuming. The next one is called I Can't Take Notes on My Computer. Fine, I'll use a typewriter. So, some backstory. I've got a Spanish teacher that absolutely doesn't allow us students to take notes on our computers because we'll use them to play games. She's told us that we need to take notes on paper, but didn't say with a pen. So I decided to do something that I've wanted to for a long time. You see, I collect typewriters, so I decided to simply use one of those. So a few weeks ago, I walked into class and I pulled out this beast of a machine, a Lectra 860. The teacher was shocked and annoyed, but when I told her that we're allowed to take notes on paper, she actually let me use it. So I suppose it did have a happy ending for everyone besides mine and my classmates' eardrums. And lucky me, after bringing it to class a total of 7 times and taking very loud notes, we're now allowed to take notes on computers. Yeah, the top comment, you should have given some to your classmates. Just think, 20 typewriters all going off at the same time. Like, yeah, it is funny, but at the same time, the teacher has a point, don't they? Like, all the teacher said was don't go on a computer so you don't play games or get distracted on your computer. It's not like because they said that they should be punished or something. But yeah, I suppose it is a stupid rule to not be able to take notes on a computer. Just imagining somebody clacking on a typewriter. I wouldn't even be able to stay in the room, I don't feel like. The next one is called How I Complied My Way Out of a Parking Ticket. A few years ago, I parked in a paid parking lot, but I forgot to buy a parking ticket. When I came back a few minutes later, I discovered an $80 ticket on my dash. While I was frustrated about my own forgetfulness, the ticket itself was fair. However, I came to discover that the amount they had charged was not. Before leaving the lot, I noticed a small detail on the terms and conditions sign at the entrance of the lot. It said that a failure to pay for a parking ticket would result in a $70 ticket, not the $80 one that I was charged. While I'm no lawyer, I do know that these signs essentially create an implicit contract upon entering the lot. Therefore, the company was technically violating their own contract by charging me extra. I appealed the ticket, stating that I'd be happy to pay the agreed upon $70, but it was rejected. I then reached out directly to customer service explaining the same situation. They rejected my request to pay the valid $70 because their ticket amounts are non-negotiable. Cue the malicious compliance. I realized that by their own words, they're the ones attempting to negotiate the price by charging me an extra $10. So I called up the supervisor of their claims department. She was already aware of this dispute and immediately attempted to shut me down, saying the signage is not up for discussion. I reminded her that the company's policy states that ticket amounts are non-negotiable and that given what the terms on the sign stated, they were trying to negotiate a higher price. Once again, she shut me down, stating the signage is not up for discussion. The rest of the conversation went like this. Me. So where can I escalate this from here? Her. There is no more escalation. Next stage is court. Cue more malicious compliance. Me. It seems silly to go to court over $10, don't you think? Her. Yeah, it does. Me. Okay, well, I'll begin the small claims court process over the non-negotiable price issue then. Her. Okay. I was having fun at this point, and I was fully ready to start taking legal steps over this $10 on a matter of principle, and knowing that if I did, the company would immediately cave. Before doing that, however, I sent one final email to the vice president of the company. I explained the whole dispute, explaining the signage, their non-negotiable policy, and how the appeals supervisor told me that my next step was to take it to court. I offered them the opportunity to resolve this civilly before going on to that stage. Not even 3 hours later, I got an email back stating that my ticket had been fully cleared as a courtesy. I called their bluff, maliciously complying to the contract and the take it to court attitude, and it worked. As an added bit of pettiness, I replied thanking them and CC'd the appeals supervisor. I then directly addressed her, telling her that this is how easy it could have been resolved if she would have actually addressed the signage issue. The moral of the story: push back against parking lot companies. They use shady practices and they try to scare people into paying unjustly. Often a simple but credible legal threat will make any issue disappear. As some have pointed out, yeah, the parking tickets aren't usually enforceable. That being said, if I ever wanted to use this lot again, which is the only one in the area, then I would have to get it resolved lest I get towed. Also, I can't recall exactly how the appeals woman brought up court, but I don't think she implied that I should sue. I think it was more of a veiled "we will sue you" sort of statement, which was of course a bluff. Regardless, and as many pointed out, her mentioning court at all was a bad idea on their part. Good on you for doing this. This comment: you handled the situation in the finest manner available. The next one is called Think We're Equals. Okay then, it's a true story that involves 3 people. I, 27 male, am the CEO of a smallish company. Charlotte, 50s female, is the administrative assistant, and Tom, 68 male, is the CEO. I, 27 male, am the CFO of a smallish company. Charlotte, 50s female, is the administrative assistant, and Tom, 68 male, is the CEO. I served as the assistant CFO for a few years, where Charlotte and I both reported directly to the CFO. I was somehow at the bottom of the totem pole between Charlotte, the CFO, and myself, despite the title and pay. I received the work that no one wanted to do. I went with it because I knew that one day I'd be her boss. That day eventually came a few months back, and things have only gotten worse. Charlotte has always considered herself a financial expert, despite not knowing the bare minimum of accounting. When the time came for us to create our official organizational structure chart, showing who reports to who, Tom asked Charlotte with it, as things here are very straightforward. When I get the final chart, I'm outraged as I see that below Tom, instead of it being just myself, I said that she's included her name as well. This was already approved by Tom and officially published. The audacity this woman had to think an administrative assistant is the same ranking of the CFO, but she also brown noses Tom, so I'm not surprised his decrepit self approved it. Now comes the good part. I mentioned this chart to several groups that we work with, and they couldn't believe it. They're all aware of her incompetence and they all want her gone as she affects their business. I decide that if I'm not her supervisor, then I don't need to check any of the work that she does. I let this go for a few months, and as much as it kills me, I leave all of her mistakes. Finally, the auditors come. They find numerous mistakes, calling all of our public financial data to be incorrect. At first, they came to me wondering how it could be so inaccurate. I then gave them the system data showing that it was Charlotte who made all of the mistakes. They continued to push though, as in previous years, the responsibility fell on the CFO. I then reminded them of our organizational structure chart showing that I was no longer in charge of what the administrative assistant did. They were upset, but one of the younger guys was laughing what I did. The auditors then strongly suggested that we fire Charlotte, or they'd have to issue their report stating things were severely misstated. She was fired last week, and Tom was issued a significant fine for being the supervisor responsible. I hope they all learned their lesson and I can hire a competent assistant now. And fair enough as well. I love this subreddit so much. I don't know what it is, but these are so fun. The next one is called Drop Everything and Help You Out. Sure, I got you. do, I want to start this post by saying, yeah, I know I should have gotten fired for this, and I do not recommend doing this in any service industry job. This happened several years ago while I was working as a waitress at a chain restaurant. There was this insane manager whom I had to work with on several occasions. She was young and thought that she knew everything, was quite trashy, and was sleeping with one of the higher-ups who was married, whose wife also worked at the same restaurant, but that's a different story. This manager, let's call her Mindy, was always on my ass about everything. I was one of the few shift leaders who knew what they were doing, knew how to make the restaurant money, and had many customers write great reviews and say wonderful things about me. I knew how to do my job and I knew how to do it well. Mindy always singled me out for things when things weren't even my fault. I would always just take it because it wasn't worth my energy fighting about it. She was the only person in the whole restaurant that I did not get along with. I had a great rapport with the bartenders, the servers, cooks, the back of house staff, and other managers. One day I came in to start my shift, but I was quickly pulled into the manager's office by a different manager. He wanted to bring it to my attention that Mindy had stated on my past shift that I was on my phone and not working hard. This was not true. I never carried my phone on me because it's a distraction. I didn't have room in my apron, my jeans did not have pockets, and honestly I didn't want to have it on me. I mentioned this to the manager and he gave me the benefit of the doubt but said he was going to keep an eye on me, as cell phone use had been becoming a major problem with several of the servers and bartenders in the past few months. One shift a few days after that was busy. I had a full section and I was sat with a party of 12 who all ordered beverages from the bar with water. I grab a tray, I fill up the water, and I hand the glassware to the service bar in the kitchen area. Once all the drinks were on the tray, I slowly started to lift it to get it situated, as it was heavy. Mindy decided that this was the best time to yell at me and tell me that she needed me to run the food that was up at the expo line, where she was standing and expediting the food. I took a second to look over at two other servers who were leaning against the wall, much closer to me on their phones. I said, I'm a little busy, can someone else help? She snapped back at me and said, I told you to do it, so you need to do it now. At that moment, I honestly didn't even care anymore, so I looked her dead in the eyes, I smiled, I said, okay, and I literally dropped the tray of drinks that I was holding onto the ground, walked over the broken glass, crushing the cups under my feet, grabbed the plates of food, and I asked her where they were going while keeping the smile on my face. The look of horror on her face, the phone-dwelling servers' faces, and the cooks' faces were quite priceless. Once I delivered the food, I went to my party at 12 and I apologized to them and I told them I dropped the tray of their drinks and I'll be right back with a new one, still with that smile on my face. Once my shift was over, Mindy pulled me into the office and explained that what I did was not okay and she was going to write me up for it. So I had to sign a document stating I understood why I was being written up, and I refused to sign it before speaking with other management. There was much more discussed in this conversation, but I can narrow it all down. She said that I'd be fired if I didn't sign the write-up document at that exact moment. I still refused and said I would speak with the GM about it tomorrow morning on my next shift. The next morning I explained to the GM what happened and I stated that I was working while others were on their phones, but Mindy singled me out. I also asked him to check the cameras to see the incident take place, and I might say it was so satisfying to physically see me drop everything. After lots of discussion, the GM said there's no problem here, ripped up the write-up and told me to continue being the hard worker that I am, and I never had to work with Mindy again. The end. I'm so surprised how well this turned out. Like, that could have been so bad, but they're like, you know what, everything's fine. I'll happily drop everything and help you out. The next one is called You're Fired for Obeying My Rules. Please stay until we can replace you though. I love reading a good story here. This one's a little bit on the edge when it comes to malicious compliance, but I know the readers here would enjoy the story, and so here it is. Make up your own mind if it fits. It was 2005 and the lady I'd met over the internet, having visited me in Australia and me visiting her in the USA and meeting her folks and all that, she'd now come to be with me and we'd married. But since arriving to stay, she had a lot of problems as her vocational college degree was not recognised in Australia, leaving her with difficulties getting a job. She was determined and flexible though and did some temporary jobs, clerical receptionist kind of things, using skills she'd learned while working at college as a librarian. She finally got a real job as a receptionist at a company that brokered loans, and she got on with things. One thing that was always a problem was that sales reps would have their clients come in and they would tell the women to make coffees for them. That wasn't part of their role, so my wife and co-workers were told that they were not to do that. It was up to the salesperson to make the coffee for themselves and the clients. This was part of an initiative to try to retain women in these roles, as they didn't tend to stay long in what was something of an anarchic office. So my wife is working and a salesman. They call them financial advisors, but they were the credit business version of the used car salesman class. Client comes in and she buzzed the guy. He comes out and says to her to make them both coffees. She tried to be discreet but said that he knew that she couldn't do that. He blew up, went to her supervisor, and she told my wife to make the coffees. Later she had her in the office and fired her. Yeah, she was fired for trying to do as she was told. The opposite of malicious, but the karma comes in anyway. She was fired but asked to stay on until they got another person to to replace her. For the next 2 months, she continued to go to work, now able and ready to refuse anything that she didn't want to do, especially the coffee making. The same guy tried once, she said no, so fire me, lol. They could not find a replacement. Word of their issues at the company had gotten around to the receptionist and clerical field locally. Edit, she reminded me the agency she had got the job through refused to send anyone. It was the third person in a row dumped when the probationary period was nearly up, so the agency was not being paid their commission. Then she was offered a much better job with some real responsibility and standing, and almost 30% more salary. Walked in the office the next day and told them she was leaving at the end of the day. No notice required, of course, and they'd still not got a replacement and did not find one for months more, by which time they were trying to replace 2 of them. Eventually, the company let the woman supervisor go and initiated sensible rules. My wife never looked back, but we still have a chuckle 18 years later at how well getting fired worked out for her, and how badly it ended for the supervisor who fired her staff for obeying the rules. Yeah, oh my god, how awful. But yeah, that's right, at least it did end up being good. And like the top comment says, the absolute worst thing about this story is the fact that you told me that 2005 was 18 years ago. I didn't need that punch of reality at 6 a.m. Okay, time for one more. One $1 lottery ticket, please. I stopped at a convenience store to buy a drink. Sign in front of the register said, proceed to self-checkout unless buying lottery tickets using cash. I have cash. Self-checkout is swamped and employees are standing around playing on their phones. So I got the attention of one of the employees and I requested one $1 lottery ticket. And oh yeah, ring up my drink as well. Scowls were across the employee's face. The best part was I went outside, scratched the ticket, and I won $5. And we got to meet again as they paid me my hard-earned $5. People were still in line at the self-checkout. Yeah, like this comment says, in convenience store. Calling me on a day off, cha-ching. This happened well over a year ago, but as a unionized employee, I get every 3rd Friday off. On my day off, I'm playing some video games and I get a text from the boss. I know it's your day off, but whatever, that's easy to ignore. But then I get a second text, and after I ignore that, I get a call. My boss, I know it's your day off, but our phones are down. Me, no worries, I'll handle it. We hang up and I call our phone provider. I'm the IT and the contact there, and this isn't my first call ever to them, so I literally have their service department saved in my phone. I call, I register the problem, and they say they'll look into it. I provide them my boss's name and extension and to call him when it's fixed. I then call my boss back and I let him know that they'll call him ASAP. But now for the malicious compliance bid. Our contract stipulates a minimum call-in of 4 hours, meaning that you can't pay me less than 4 hours a day, unless it's by my own choosing. If you call me for an hour and you send me home, I get 4 hours of pay. But wait, there's more. We also have an overtime clause that pays overtime at 150%. And lastly, we have a clause that says that overtime must be approved by the boss, or else it's 1-to-1 toil, time off in lieu, which you can take at a 1-to-1 ratio. Oh yeah, if I decide that the weekend is a good time for server updates, I don't need to ask for approval, but my 2 hours of work only translate to 2 hours of paid time off elsewhere. Combine all this in one delightful batch and you get a 10-minute call that results in 6 hours of bank time off. I went right back to my video games, filled out my timesheet the week after and said, I know it's your day off, but is implied consent for overtime. Minimum call out of 4 hours at 150% is 6 hours, almost an entire day off with pay in exchange for a 10-minute call. Thank you very much. Bonus, guess who has 2 thumbs and has since never been called back on his day off? This unionized guy. Hint, get unionized and fight back. Wait a second though, but is this malicious? I suppose so. I mean, like, yeah, it turned out awesome for you, but I feel like the boss also probably wouldn't have cared too much. Like, surely them calling you on your day off, like they know what they're getting into. But also, you said they never called you on a day off ever again, so they probably weren't too happy about this. The next one is called Change the Salary System After Start Date. More than happy to comply. Here's a little story about a summer job I did a while ago that y'all might enjoy. This happened a few years back. It was during summer break and I was back home from university, looking for something to do to keep me busy and earn some cash. I stumbled upon an ad for a local music festival needing help managing their concerts, mostly checking in visitors and also working as a driver. I reached out, said that I'd be interested and tell them my hourly fee, which I earned from my last job. They answered back rather fast and told me to start ASAP. Since they didn't argue with me about my proposed hourly rate, I gathered they've accepted it. Well, a few days after I started working for them, one of the bosses approached me and said they don't exactly do the hourly rate, but rather pay a fixed price for a day that you work for them. No way, they can't tell you that after. At first I was annoyed since it would have been so much less than I initially thought, but then I realized I can just use their own system against them. Want me to go around and hand out flyers to people for 30 minutes? Yeah, this will be noted as a whole day. Want me to go collect additional chairs and bring them to the venue for 20 minutes? Yep, another day added. You get my system. Ah, that sweet moment when after the whole gig I handed my registered days calculation to the boss. She looked at it, her eyes turned wide, and you could see that her thought process on her face was calculating. I simply grinned while she realized that her system absolutely backfired with me. I ended up earning more than they would have paid me with the hourly system that I proposed. 1 week later, I had the money in my bank account. Weirdly enough, I never heard back. I would have loved to work with them again. OP left some comments here. I suggested that I note down every single hour worked and they pay me for those hours that I worked so that compensation would be more fair to both parties, since they would only pay a little amount when it's only a few hours a day, and obviously a bigger amount when it's more hours. They said that they don't pay by the hour, but rather by the days that you did work for them. There were days where I lost out on their system big time because there was a lot to do, and I worked much more for their set daily amount. So to equal it out, I calculated days where I only did minimal work as full days too. And then this comment, but how else could you have calculated it under their system? It seems like counting it as a full day was your only option. I couldn't. That's why I initially proposed the hourly rate system. I'm pretty certain they gambled on the fact that the workers, like me, only did very intense days and long hours, and then they would have gotten the most workforce out of it for a very little pay. Plus, they most certainly hoped that I wouldn't count in days I only did little work out of courtesy. Screw that. Yeah, right, I was so confused about that. So you're pretty much doing what they said, but yeah, that's their mistake. Cause yeah, that implies that if they ask you to come in and do something that doesn't take very long, that you're not gonna get paid for that because it wasn't a full day. The next one is called, he wanted me to clean up all the weights myself, so I did. Lifting at the gym, and my powerlifting ass has a ton of plates set up on the leg press. I get done and another guy comes up to me. Hey, how many sets you got left? Actually, I just finished. Alright, cool, thanks. I start taking down the weights, 10 plates on each side. Hey, mind helping me take down the weights? If we both do so, it'll be cleaned up quicker and you won't have to wait so long to get started. Nah, I'm good waiting. You put so many plates on, you should probably take them all off. Wait, so let me get this straight. You want me to take all the plates off on my own? Yeah, your mess, you pick it up. Fine then. I get down to about 3 plates aside when he's scrolling on his phone and continue to take the plates down. Oh wait, I need 3 aside. You can stop now. Oh no, you told me you wanted me to take all the weights down myself. So that's what I'm gonna do. No, seriously, it's fine. You can stop. It's all good. No, if I have to personally take off all of my weights, then you have to personally load on all of yours. He had to take a moment to collect himself and remain calm. I assume because he realized he didn't want to try to fight a guy that just repped triple the weight that he was gonna do. So he shut up and I emptied the entire leg press. I got my stuff and I walked away. Peeking over my shoulder, I saw him start to put the plates back on the machine. Holy cannoli, some of you thought this was am I the a-hole? First off, where I live, 99.9% of people help each other by default, partially out of common courtesy, but also because it saves time. I asked his help because I would have felt awkward with him just standing there waiting on me to put 14 plus plates away myself. Do I clean up my own weights? Hell yeah, I do. Been lifting heavy for 4 years. If I didn't, I would have been kicked out of every gym in town. Do I help others clean up when I'm taking over? Yeah, like I said, it saves both of us time, and I don't have time to wait on other people to single-handedly clean up stuff. Is he obligated to help me clean up? No. If he had simply said no, I would have just done it and left the weights he wanted. He triggered my malicious compliance when he condescended me about how cleaning up was my responsibility. I'm not some high schooler that never learned to clean up after himself. I know it's my responsibility. Edit number 2. Okay, the number of plates and the intimidated by me lifting triple thing does sound like a humble brag. My bad. But I noted the number of plates to illustrate how 2 people taking down 14 plates would be a lot quicker than 1 person taking down 14. And I mentioned the intimidation thing because he was fuming so hard that for a moment I thought he actually might start an altercation. Edit 3. I'm turning off notifications. Apparently way too many keyboard warriors who lifted every man for themselves gyms and have decided common courtesy and community are for the weak, and I can't control myself responding. This is such a beautiful subreddit. But yeah, that is annoying. They should have just helped you instead of getting all upset about it. The next one is called You Want to Enforce a Non-Existent Dress Code? Game on. Years ago, I was working in a development lab for a large tech company. It was pretty casual and there was no dress code until an old school manager took exception to a couple of us showing up in tie-dye. A coworker was sent home to change clothes and I got lectured about professionalism and appearance, and it would be nice to see you show up in a real shirt sometimes, you know, with buttons and a collar. So I bought several of the ugliest, loudest, brightest tropical print shirts I could find. Yes, with buttons and collars, and those became my standard standard work attire forever after. Grumpy manager actually said, "Okay, I give up." Yeah, like this comment says, the grumpier the person, the more satisfying it is when they finally admit defeat. Hopefully he appreciated your dedication to this cause. Yeah, I can't tell if they found it super funny or if they were super upset. That's so funny. The next one is called Written Up for Being Chronically Late. But wait, this happened back in the 1980s before, computers on every desk. My employer was a small company, only 10 or so employees. I was totally committed to the job and I gave it my all, not leaving until all the day's work was done, sometimes staying after work to do so. I'd been there for more than 5 years at the time and was a key employee by then. I was the one that people went to for help with complicated stuff. I did a prodigious amount of work and I always had stellar performance reviews. Occasionally traffic or whatever would make me a few minutes late for work. I didn't worry about it. We didn't use timesheets or a time clock and everyone was salaried. Erroneously, but that's a different story. Then one of the owner's favorites was promoted to VP and put in charge of HR. Before this, we were equals in the company. One of the first things she did was give me a written reprimand for insubordination, for being late one too many times. Eyes wide open now, I took the hit and began my campaign of malicious compliance. From that date forward, I entered the office 1 minute early, got to my desk and was seen to be busy, waited for 30 minutes to go and pour myself some coffee. I stopped my work. I left the building every day at exactly the end of business hours, leaving unfinished work on my desk. I received a joyous commendation for the VP for correcting my attitude. I left there within a few weeks and they had to hire 3 people to do my job. Editor ad. The only way to get raises in that industry was to change jobs periodically. I proceeded to job hop every 2 years after that and I upped my income by over 500% by leveraging my successes in each job and my varied experience. It was all worth it and then some. Oh my god, how annoying! Like, yeah, you were working so hard and you were contributing so much to this place, and yeah, it took 3 different people to replace you, and you get somebody like this who's gonna write you up if you're a tiny bit late. Oh, that's so awful. Awful for the company too. Like, what are they even doing? Yeah, that's so ridiculous. The next one is called I'm Just a Bartender and You Know Everything. Okay, have a nice shower. Happened about 10 years ago now. I'd been working in catering and hospitality, managing pubs, for about 10 years at that stage. The catering company I'd worked for had come up short-staffed for a smallish function that they were putting on. Probably max 200 people at a venue that they controlled. I was in a different division but was asked to help out on the bar and the bump in and out. Easy enough and the music was looking pretty good, so I agreed. It was in the middle of spring. The weather had not yet been really warm, so we were expecting decent numbers but nothing special. Bringing in the bar was easy enough. The venue was massive and easily able to accommodate the truck, etc. Having a single mobile bar with just one tap tree was probably on the light side, but I figured that the venue manager knew what she was doing. So I introduced myself to him and I got to work. I unloaded and brought all the gear and beverage in and made a couple of attempts to discuss how we'd set up the service area. Each time was shut down with progressively more aggressive language until he finally told me, "I've run dozens of functions in this venue. I think I know how to set it up. We really only asked for a bartender." Okay, no problem, I thought. I didn't mention it to him that it had been me that had picked up the truck from the warehouse, collected the bar and the 10 kegs from our supplier, as well as the other beverage package, and delivered it to him, or that I was the only one able to bump it all out at the end of the evening. So I just agreed with whatever he said and set it up as he wanted. So the weather ended up being a beautiful day, about 27 degrees, 80 Fahrenheit, with a light breeze, and the turnout was more like 400. Much better than expected. Pretty quickly it turned out that we were struggling to keep up with bar service, so I suggested that rather than a traditional service we should have one person on the till, one person constantly pouring beers, i.e. never shut off the tap, and one person filling other drinks like wine and soft drinks, etc. Again, I was snapped at by the now clearly stressed venue supervisor. "You just keep serving and let me do the thinking." Okay, so now I'd had enough. Customers were getting frustrated at the slow service and this peanut was too proud to accept advice from someone far more experienced, and then the keg blew. I was about to change it when the peanut stepped in and said that he'd take care of it. I checked that he knew what he was doing and was assured that he'd done it 100 times and to back off and leave him to it, so I did. I watched him not uncouple the gas line and go straight for the beer lock. Happily, he had his face right in the spot, so as soon as he cracked the lock, he copped a huge spray in the face of nice warm beer foam, all through his hair and all over his glasses, wet all down the front of his shirt as well. It was glorious, and the first 30 people in line thought so as well, because they'd also witnessed some of his antics. I didn't hear much of him for the rest of the day. He asked me to change the kegs when needed and pretty much stayed away from the service area. We streamlined things as well, and although it didn't end up a success as far as customer satisfaction, it was not the disaster that was brewing. Well, so they ended up asking you for help with the kegs after telling you to back off when you did offer to help. Why are people like this? Let people help and stop acting like you know everything. So bloody frustrating. Buddy, it's okay to get help from people. This person's just sitting there like, oh my god, what's about to happen? It would have been so entertaining, but also awful. The next one is called Just Book a Car Route. Great idea. I work in a large organization within a team that's on the road and is on the move almost full time. Naturally, we have a car assigned to our team. That was until a new fleet manager started and decided that we should instead be utilizing the car booking system and sold our car. The car booking system is basically this. If you have to take home a vehicle as part of your package, you must have it on the car booking system so that anyone who may need a vehicle to run an errand can book a car and take it. Guess who has a take-home vehicle? The fleet manager. So we started booking it out full time, and when he needs to run an errand, he has to book someone else's car. He officially hates us and definitely knows that we're being malicious, but he can't really do anything about it. And like the top comment says, the price the fleet manager must pay for trying to get a raise from screwing over those needing a company car. Good on you and your team, following the rules. Bravo. Yeah, 100%. Like, we're not doing anything wrong. We're working completely within the rules. The stupid rules. The next one is called Sure, Give Me the Traffic Violation Ticket. Long time lurker, first time poster. This happened in the Philippines. 3 years ago, I was driving to get some lunch for me and my co-workers. I stopped at an intersection with a traffic light. I was turning left and made sure to stop before the yellow intersection box. There were no painted markings on the road apart from the intersection box. While waiting for the light to turn green, a traffic enforcer suddenly knocked on my window and told me that I've stopped my car beyond the white stop line for cars. Basically, the enforcer said that I was impeding the pedestrian crosswalk. My co-worker seated in the passenger seat and I checked through the car window and we can't see any printed lines on the road apart from the intersection box. The enforcer guided me to turn left and maybe stop at the side of the road. It was lunchtime and it was common for some traffic enforcers here to ask for bribes for people to get out of violations. The following conversation went like this. Enforcer, you know why I stopped you? OP, no, please enlighten me. Enforcer, you stopped within the pedestrian lane. OP, even though there are no clear markings on the road. Enforcer, they're there, clear as day, but very faded, but still there. OP, getting the hint that the enforcer is asking for bribes. Okay. Enforcer, do you want me to give you a ticket? OP, yes, please. You're an enforcer of the law. If you tell me that I made a violation, then I completely trust your authority. I apologize for the driving error I made, so please write your ticket and give it to me, and then I'll immediately settle my fines. Thank you also for letting me know that I committed a mistake, and I'll make sure to not do it again. The enforcer suddenly had a Pikachu face, realizing that he won't get a bribe from me. After 10 seconds of stunned silence, he just said, get the hell out of here. I drove off with my lunch intact, my money intact, and 2 bouts of howling laughter, courtesy of myself and my co-worker. Wow, that's really bad. It reminds me of that Simpsons episode where Homer doesn't realize that Chief Wiggum is trying to bribe him. That's a beautiful episode.
Hey, Dad, I think he wants...
Not right now, son. Daddy's talking to a policeman.
The next one is called Unnecessary Meetings. Here's your expensive bill. My company works with a customer that has a factory 2.5 hours away from us. We've been working with them for years now, and we've been to the factory a couple of times at the start of the project. Everyone at the customer works at that factory. We're in charge of migrating paper trail to digital documents for a company that has like 4 warehouses full of paper trail documents. The solution has been working for some time. Last week they asked us for a meeting. My boss said, okay, online whenever you want. They said they wanted an in-person one, that we should go to the factory. My boss didn't want to, so we said, if we go, I'll have to bill you for the time. They said yes. So Monday morning, my boss and the tech in charge of the process head down there. The meeting lasts exactly 15 minutes. It could have been solved in exactly 2 paragraphs in one email. Since they're there, the tech asked the client to show them the paper trail warehouses and a tour of the factory. They happily comply. Overall, the meeting that could have been 15 minutes or 2 emails lasted 5 hours of travel plus 3 hours of touring there, plus the food. Guess who's getting billed 16 hours of work and the food for a 15-minute meeting? Surely the company was only trying to spend money or something. Like they had a budget or whatever and they were trying to spend it. Yeah, like this comment says, it sounds like someone has excess budget that needs to burn off. Yeah, and the funny thing is, stuff like this would happen all the time. Yeah, it's hard to say because on one hand it's like, okay, it's an unnecessary meeting, so we're going to charge you this expensive bill, and assuming that they're not happy about this. But also on the other hand, they might have been completely fine with it. The next one says, my boss boss loves to call me at 6:15 a.m. to ask me if I'd like to fill the shifts of the people who just called in sick. It's an everyday thing. I was bored and frustrated, so I decided to volunteer at 3:30 a.m. to call this same manager to ask if they needed extra help. He got super pissed and tried to write me up for it. I showed the GM the timestamps of the calls I had received. I don't get calls anymore. Oh, that's so funny. Like, hey, it's 3:30 in the morning and I know you're probably going to call me at 6:15, so I need to double check. Do you need me today? You demanded that my entire team be at the office for the 4th of July. Fine, enjoy paying for the office party. So this starts on Monday the 13th as I receive an email from a VP, not over my department, or bad VP. I'm told that my team will be required on the 4th. I politely tell them no, that our team has been scheduled this day off and people already have plans. My team is the IT team, and as many of you know, IT team gets shafted every time it can by any company. So over the course of the week, I let my team know what was happening. I let them know I've been reaching out to higher ups to fix it. I also tell them that if their plans are ruined, I'll make it right at work. Over the course of 3 meetings, it started to look like things will not go my way. In response, I sent an email to the CEO of the company. All my higher ups know that I was going to do this and said that I should, as he's very family oriented and that he would not allow anyone to work on a national holiday. Well, he's on vacation in the Bahamas until the 6th, but his assistant informed me that he'd look at this when he gets back. Repeatedly slams head into desk, so I tell everyone that it will be work from home and that we'll be setting my cell phone as priority in the call routing. Meanwhile, I would get most of the calls. To be honest, I was expecting almost 0 calls, especially since I was asked to send out a notification that IT support would cover the 4th of July. I never sent that email out. A day later, I was given another outrage. I was told in an email that my employees will be required to be at the office and no one was allowed to work from home. They would be checking the door badge ins to verify that we were at the office. I asked them why in an email, and they said they wanted to make sure that no one was playing any video games at work. We normally work from home about 2/3 of the week, and video game playing is a normal occurrence at work. So I walked into the person's office. After a very long conversation where she was losing the logic war with me, she told me that it's just IT, you guys don't have lives. Oh my god. No, I'm not kidding you. That's what she told me. I reported this to my VP who said, I'll take care of this. It probably won't be until after the 4th, so get creative. I know this man well. We've worked together for a long time, and get creative is code for corporate effery. I asked the person that was requiring us to be at the office if they cared if we had an office party. They said no, as long as it didn't interfere with the call flow. Even suggested using my new company card to pay for it. Go wild. Pro tip, never tell me to go wild. At this point, it was Tuesday the 21st. I let everyone know what's up, but that I do have something planned. I asked who had things planned for that day. 2 people told me they were planning to shoot off fireworks with their family, but the rest were planning barbecues with their friends. I write up an email to the VP over my department and the bad VP. I tell them all that I let everybody know. We all were expected to work until 8 p.m. Monday. Per the conversation with the bad VP, I'll be having an office party as a sort of sorry to the guys and gals who got shafted by this decision. The bad VP replied again, thank you for your understanding. Also, yes, I would expect an office party if I had to work on the 4th of July as well. So go wild, enjoy your time. Use your new company credit card if you need to cover a few expenses. Also, I should not have to remind you or anybody else, no fireworks or alcohol on company property. So now it's time to tell you about my office. See, a while back the IT team was moved from the main corporate office and into a smaller building by itself. It has a nice gaming break room, a decent sized gym, and a full-on drink bar. Soft drinks, mind you, no alcohol at work. Outback is a big patio that crosses county lines as soon as you cross a small creek. A creek that just so happens to have a footbridge over it, leading to an empty field. I start making phone calls. Monday, June the 25th, I call up everyone into an hour early meeting that morning. I explain to them all that I'll be making it right. I asked everyone to invite their friends and family to the office. No supplies will be needed to be brought by anyone. I tell them all that this will be non-alcoholic, but that I will be planning something for everyone. I tell them to expect all food to be provided and they don't need to bring anything, unless they want to bring some fireworks, i.e. they won't have to spend a dime. The 4th comes and the entire day we did absolutely no work. No tickets, no calls came in. Well, 7 calls did come in, but from the same person, the bad VP. She was calling to make sure that we were manning the phones. All of us were playing video games or watching movies. 6 p.m. rolls around and everyone was told that the food was ready. People were expecting expecting hot dogs, hamburgers, maybe a bratwurst or two. What they got was a full-on barbecue feast with pizza and other foods. There was smoked brisket, spare ribs, smoked sausage, smoked turkey, both kinds of tater salad, green beans with bacon and onion, pizza from 2 different places, excellent hamburgers and bratwurst hot dogs. On the dessert side was cake, very good cookies, 4 different kinds of pies, and about 2 pounds of fudge. Families and friends started showing up at around 6:15. Some brought alcohol, but I told them they'd have to leave that in their cars as I was not that crazy. Some were not too happy about that, but agreed as it was a free dinner for random strangers. So let me set the scene for you. I'm out there with all calls routed to my cell phone and everyone just having a good time. We have a ton of people there just enjoying the fun night, chatting about random stuff, eating the food, and occasionally lighting off some sparklers or throwing firecrackers into the stream. It's not stocked and only 1 foot deep. My VP, not the bad VP mind you, showed up with his family and brought some water balloons for the kids and man-children. Around 8:30ish it's getting dark and people want to shoot off more than just the simple sparklers and firecrackers that we had been using. The VP over the IT department had everyone cross the footbridge, over county line and off company property mind you, and we set up a big wooden board using it as a launching pad. We fired off what we had for about an hour or two and sort of just hung out for a little while. At around this time people were tired and ready to go home. I told people to take home leftovers within reason. We all clocked out at 8 and no one left until about 10:30. The bad VP did call once more. It was 7:50 and she called asking for a status update. My exact words were, "Well, you were the only one to call us today. The rest of us were on the back patio enjoying the 4th of July shindig." She simply acted like my boss and said, "As long as no alcohol or fireworks are on company property, I don't care." We ate roughly half of the food that was catered. The rest was taken home. A small group volunteered to stay behind to clean up, including my VP. We had a funny conversation about how this would make waves with the bosses, but he said he had my back and asked me how much this cost. I gave him a sideways look which made him laugh. Tuesday morning I submitted the expense report to my VP. This email would inevitably make its way over to the bad VP and up the chain to the CIO of the company. It would be a bad idea to give out the exact cost of the party, but I can tell you that because of this 4th of July party, new rules were put into place. Any expenses over $4,000 or more must be approved by the direct supervisor, VP over the department, and the full expense report must be sent to the financial department for review after the fact. Hint, the party was over $6,000. The barbecue was the most expensive part. I didn't order from a low or mid-tier place. The place I ordered from has consistently been on the top 10 in the DFW listing for the last 30 years. I ate at that place so much I made friends with the owner. The best barbecue I ever had. The pies and cakes were custom made by a bakery and the cookies were made by a boutique cookie place. I had 10-12 packs of Coke, Coke Zero, Dr. Pepper Zero, Pepsi, and Pepsi Zero. I bought 5 pepperoni, 5 sausage, 5 cheese, 2 Hawaiian, and 3 cheeseburger pizzas, all from the one place, and nearly the same number from another place. Excluding the cheeseburger ones, I subbed out those for a different specialty pizza from the other place. The burgers were from an excellent burger place that did catering. I know that owner well. He brought his kids for the night of fun after he heard what was going to happen. He was also the one who brought the brat dogs, as he recently added those to his menu. This was the most expensive office party in the history of the company. The only things more expensive than this were some business meetings that the CEO rented private rooms in high-end restaurants for. As for the CEO, he was outraged. Not at the cost of the party, mind you. He knew that the party would not have been necessary if people had been allowed to go home. He was outraged that IT was the only group required to work on that day. When I submitted the log showing that we received no real phone calls, no service requests, and that we basically watched movies and play video games during the whole shift, he had heard enough. He apparently sent out a scathing email about work-life balance and the importance of our holidays to every upper management. It was kind of funny as people wanted me to get in trouble for what I did, but the reality is other departments have done similar things in the past, just not on the scale that IT did. The bad VP was administered quite effectively and sent me an apology email. I forwarded it to the team with a strong hint to not reply. Then the VP let the CIO and the CEO know about what the bad VP said. You guys don't have lives. The bad VP did actually confirm she said it in a meeting with her EVP. It did not go over well. I've never heard people yelling in an office meeting like that before. The CEO of the company came to our office and yelled at her. Not sure if she was fired, but she's not at work today. In Active Directory, she does not have the down arrow of death, so not 100% what happened to her. I know she lost whatever clout that she had at the company with her attitude. If anything more happens, I will update, but so far it looks like the fallout from this is that I caused a new rule to be put in place about how much you're allowed to spend at one time. The bad VP may or may not be let go or forced to resign. I know she got yelled at. Strangely, there's no longer any pushback for my bid to get everyone back to working from home. Wow, what an adventure. That was so fun to read. And it sounds like such a good place to work. Yeah, like the top comment says, "Can I work for you? This sounds magical." I can't believe that person said that the IT team doesn't have have a life? That's so bloody out of pocket. And yeah, that was such a good way to start the episode. The next one is called Manager Forces Me to Get a Doctor's Note, despite it being illegal to do so. The doctor writes him the most passive-aggressive note, signing me off for 2 weeks instead of 2 days to teach him a lesson. I posted this and it got removed, and I think it was maybe because I didn't make the malicious compliance clear enough, so I'm gonna try again and make it extra clear. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a supermarket. I should note that I was a pretty reliable employee. I was never late. In fact, I often got in early, and I rarely called in sick. At the time that this happened, I hadn't called in sick for 9 months, and even then, the manager had sent me home. I'd been up all night swinging between burning hot and freezing cold, so I was obviously feverish, and I've been throwing up at both ends, shall we say. At one point at about 2 a.m, I was on the toilet with my head in the sink, utterly miserable. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, I was lifting my head off the sink and it was 7 a.m. I was due to start work at 12 that day, but that obviously wasn't going to happen. So I called up the manager. Let's call the manager Steve. Steve was known for being a real a-hole. He never believed anyone who called in sick except for his best buds, usually other managers, never lowly staff, but often called in sick himself. A lot of the time we knew it was because he was hungover and not actually sick. The conversation went as follows. Me: hey Steve, sorry, I can't come in, I'm sick. Steve: with what? Me: I don't know, I think it might be the flu. I've been up all night being sick and I've got a fever. Steve: don't be stupid. If you had the flu, you'd be completely knocked out. I need you in. Come in or you're fired. Me: I can't. I just told you I can't stop vomiting. I passed out. Steve, growling angrily: either come in or bring a doctor's note or you're fired. In the UK, you're legally allowed to self-certify for 5 days. This means you can tell your employer that you are sick and you don't need a doctor's note. If you're sick for more than 5 days, you need a note. It's also illegal to demand a doctor's note during the self-certify period. I knew this, but I was terrified. This was during the recession. I couldn't afford to lose my job, so I got myself dressed, almost passed out trying to do so, and then trudged to the doctor some 25 minutes walk away. I end up sitting in the doctor's office for a little bit over an hour, which considering it's a walk-in was pretty good. I get in to see the doctor and she's furious at me for coming in. You're not supposed to come to the doctors when you have a cold or flu, and of course I knew that I should be able to self-certify. She told me as such, saying that I shouldn't be here and I should have stayed home. I then explained what had happened with Steve and how he threatened to fire me over this, and I couldn't afford to lose my job. I was struggling as it was. My doctor turned her anger towards my manager. She asked if I got sick pay from the company, and I said yes. He wants a sick note, does he? The doctor says. Okay, I'll give him a sick note. Now, my manager just wanted a note confirming that I was sick, but instead my doctor wrote something along the lines of this: this person has come to the surgery because manager name has insisted that she come in spite of the fact that this is illegal and all employees are allowed to self-certify. Due to being forced to make this unnecessarily and highly dangerous trip when the patient is ill, has a fever over 39 degrees Celsius, and almost passed out in the waiting room, I'm signing them off for 2 full weeks to recover. Had they been allowed to self-certify as is the law, they might only have needed a few days, but due to straining themselves, they're now required 2 full weeks. They are not to be permitted to work until after the 2 weeks. The doctor said she would have signed me off longer, but this was the longest she could do without requiring further evidence. So basically, instead of just being off for a few days, I was now signed off for a full 2 weeks and I'd be paid for it. I went to my place of work, at which point one of the duty managers saw me and asked me what the hell I was doing here. Go home, I was obviously very unwell. I explained what happened. They agreed to help me downstairs to Steve's office and went with me inside. I handed Steve the note. He looked worried and tried to say, I wasn't being serious about firing you. Well, gee, when you angrily growled it down the phone, it sure sounded like it. The duty manager then declared that they were going to drive me home. It was clear that Steve wanted to argue but had the sense to know that he shouldn't. The duty manager then drove me home, made sure I was okay, and then went back to work where they informed our union rep of what happened. Steve had a disciplinary hearing where he was given a severe reprimand and a warning. Steve tried to argue that he never said I'd be fired and I was lying, and just decided to go to the doctors, but the duty manager said they heard him admit to it when he said to me that he really didn't mean it. I felt better after a few days and I enjoyed my 2 weeks off, fully paid, and enjoyed the nice weather that we had. Meanwhile, Steve was forced to work overtime because we were short-staffed, so thanks to the doctor, instead of being off for a few days, I ended up getting a nice 2-week paid vacation, and Steve was given a final warning, all because he insisted that I get a doctor's note. Edit: to clarify the whole "you're not supposed to come in when you're ill," I should have been more specific. The rule is that you're not supposed to come in when you have a cold or a flu. The reason is there's nothing a doctor can really do except recommend that you take over-the-counter cold and flu meds, so it is recommended that you don't come in if you have a cold or a flu, and instead take medication at home or pick some up at a pharmacy instead, so you don't risk infecting those waiting in the surgery. Even then, it isn't a hardcore rule, more a common courtesy asked of people. If you really want to, you absolutely can. Yeah, wow, what an unbelievable story, but it's so sad that this even had to happen in the first place. Like, oh, I wasn't actually being serious about firing you. Yeah, well, maybe don't scream that at them when they're on the phone. It sucks that you had to deal with this, but yeah, at least it did turn out good. The other people at your work sounded good, but yeah, Steve, not so much. The next one is called You Don't Want a Woman Working on Your Car. That's fine, but you're going to be waiting a long time. Many years ago, I worked at a car dealership. The attached service garage was small and I was the only licensed mechanic. I would occasionally have issues with male customers. They'd second guess my diagnosis and watch me while I worked on their cars, double check my work in the parking lot, etc. I didn't deal with customers directly, and I'd often get my apprentice to pull cars in and out of the shop for me. This morning in particular, we were busy. The lot jockey and apprentice were occupied helping wash cars for delivery and driving to a customer's house. The service advisor left a work order and keys at the parts counter, and I went out the front through service to get the car. It was in for a service campaign, which was an update done with the scan tool. It takes about 10 minutes. The customer was planning on waiting and was sitting in service. When he saw me with his keys in my hand, he immediately stood up, alarmed. I was hustling, so I walked right by him and out the door. I missed the following conversation according to the service advisor, also female. Customer, who is that chick? Is she going to be working on my car? I don't want her working on my car. Advisor, the other tech is out at the moment, so it's going to be quite a wait until someone else can look at your car. Customer, that's fine, I'll wait for a guy. I don't want that chick touching my car. Advisor, politely, understood. The advisor comes to let me know, and I pull the car out and I put the work order and the keys back on the counter, and then half an hour passes. The apprentice is still away and I'm happily working on something else, bringing other cars in and out. The customer's now watching each and every person who comes through the door. The high school co-op student comes in to get something signed. The customer's keys are still sitting on the desk. It's been about an hour now. Customer, hey, why hasn't my car gone in yet? Can't you get this guy to do it? Advisor, no, sorry, he's just a co-op student, so he's not allowed to drive the cars due to liability and insurance concerns. Customer, just get someone else to bring the car in and he can do the work. This was supposed to take 10 minutes. Wow, the audacity. Advisor, sorry sir, he's just a high school student doing his co-op. He's not approved to perform warranty work. Only licensed techs and apprentices can do the recall. The car jockey returns. The advisor hands the car jockey a different set of keys, and he brings yet another car into the shop for me. The customer is becoming incensed. I've been sitting here for over an hour and I've watched 5 cars go in before mine. My appointment was for 8 a.m. This is getting ridiculous. At this point, he says that he literally doesn't care who does the recall, but it has to be a guy. The service advisor starts listing off the names of men who work in the dealership, then saying why they can't perform the recall. Well, there's Herman, but he's just the car jockey. He doesn't know how to work on cars. Then there's Jeet, but he's about 17. I wouldn't want him doing the recall personally. I guess we could ask Mike, but Mike is the parts guy. He doesn't know how to use the scan tool. The detailers are men, but they know nothing about cars. The customer's fuming at this point and demands to talk to the service manager. The manager comes out of his office and guides the customer into the garage. He's pretty old school, lights up a cigarette standing at the end of my bay and points at me. That's my best technician. Those guys take orders from her. You can either wait for her to finish what she's working on and then you can ask if she's willing to work on your car, or you can take your car somewhere else. The guy was pretty shook up at this point and he took his car and he left 2 hours after he'd first arrived. I don't think we ever saw him again, which was not too much of a loss, all things considered. That manager in particular always stuck up for me and took my side. The service advisor has this very deadpan sense of humor. She knew full well that it would easily be an hour before the apprentice would return and that no one else could do the recall. This was not the first sexist that we'd encountered. Thank you for reading. Wow, what an absolute dingbat. Yeah, like the top comment says, he can't fix his car. How the hell can he determine who can? Don't pay an expert and try to second guess them. Yeah, that's so lame, and the sad thing is there would be so many dudes like this. Like, oh, a woman working on my car? I don't think so. Yeah, that's so bad. And yeah, that's right, it's not a huge loss. See you later. The next one is called My Neighbors Wanted to Call a Professional to Mark Their Property Line. My parents agreed. This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants costing thousands, but my parents thought it'd be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. Oh no. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line, therefore he had total right to take them down. Oh, how awful can you be to do this? He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day, my father called the company that put the plants in, and with the warranty, we could have them replanted next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way that it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught him chopping them down at 2 in the morning. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional and mark his property line. My godfather agreed. A few days later, I come home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took down his fence, completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing 1/4 of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost $10,000 for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. Oh my god, if karma was a post, this is 100% it. That's what you get for doing stuff like this. That was so deserved. Like, oh, I'm gonna chop down your plants twice. And also, imagine if your next door neighbor was like this. I'd be moving. That's so awful, and I feel like that's enough for today. Let's read something a lot more wholesome. I'm screaming. Whose little man is this? Oh, so cute. And the little smile as well. Hello, I got you flowers. Did I hear negative self-talk? Please do not do it. You're great. You're dandy. You're far too kind. But yeah, that's right, guys. Don't forget you're great and you're also dandy. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this picture. The warmth and the scrunchy face. The ears. I'm so happy for her. Their ears are circular. They're so rounded off. Oh, that's way too cute. Yeah, I understand why you haven't been able to stop thinking about this. That's beautiful. My cat at 5 a.m. Oh, that's so true. Like, what's that? It's 2 hours before you're probably gonna get up. Better make a whole bunch of noise. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful time. And if you did and you want to see more episodes like this, make sure you like and subscribe. And the comment of the day goes to the stray black cat. It's a nice day for some infuriating nice guys. Watching this on my bus ride to work. Thank you for the laughs to start my day. You're too kind. Thank you for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It sounds like you did, and I'm so glad. Always a good time for terrifying nice guys. Wow, today's episode was super fun. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. There's something so addictive about this subreddit, and I'm sure I'm going to make a new episode on here super soon. And yeah, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you look after yourself and make sure you have a beautiful, amazing rest of your day. And you know what I'm about to say because I say it every single day. Bye!